The boy sliced open the whale's belly, but terror froze him for 3 full seconds. Sleeping inside the beast was a girl clutching a massive greatsword. Miraculously, breath still stirred in her lungs, yet Stern's face darkened with dread. No ordinary human could survive such a fate. He immediately ordered Julian to stand guard over the mysterious sleeper while he frantically searched the archives for answers. Though terrified, Julian found his gaze lingering on her ethereal beauty. For a boy single for 18 years, his cheeks burned with sudden heat. His imagination began to run wild. Surely, as her savior, this sleeping beauty was destined to become his future bride. He was already picturing their 11 children winning the World Cup when reality shattered his daydream. Her eyes snapped open. Julian stammered, desperate to explain his heroism, but she cut him off with a single, sharp glance. She demanded his identity, and the moment he spoke his name, she bowed with absolute reverence, addressing him as master and awaiting a title. Realizing she had lost her memories, Julian gazed at her expectant face, his mind racing for a name worthy of her grace. His eyes fell upon a crimson bracelet resting by the bedside. An inspiration struck. He named her Carnelian. Her eyes shimmered with the same gemstone hue, but little did he know that single word had just sealed their tragic and glorious fates forever. Suddenly, Stern burst into the room, panic written on his face. He had uncovered a terrifying truth in the ancient texts. She was no human. She was a seal, a living weapon of mass destruction, locked away until summoned by a power capable of shaking the world. In the moment a tamer grants her a name, an eternal, unbreakable soul contract is forged. Though human in form, they possess godlike strength, bound only to their master's will. If the tamer perishes, they return to the void of eternal sleep. But the warning came too late. Runes blazed across her greatsword, and Carnelian knelt, swearing absolute loyalty to Julian. Stern collapsed in defeat, while Julian stood there, oblivious that he had just shackled himself to a living calamity. Yet, one mystery gnawed at Stern history had never recorded a legendary seal being vomited out by a whale. One thing was certain: Carnelian was a high-rank seal, possessing combat prowess that could slaughter entire armies of 10,000 men. Carnelian scoffed at the comparison, her aura flaring with arrogance. "You insult me. 10,000 I wouldn't even need to floss after eating them. Toppling a kingdom is child's play." Yet, a strange silence followed. There was no spiritual resonance. She looked at Julian with utter contempt, feeling no connection. How could a lowly cook like you possibly awaken a being like me? Julian's pride stung, and he snapped back. "Excuse me, I didn't wake you up. You opened your eyes on your own." As they bickered, Stern intervened with a solution. "If the bond is weak, we simply transfer the contract to a worthy master." They could pass ownership of Carnelian to a true tamer. Julian's eyes lit up. This was his ticket out of this mess. He could finally escape this predicament. But Carnelian raised an eyebrow. "Does this backwater fishing village actually harbor a knight?" "Not here, certainly, but the village was ruled by a lord." So Stern summoned the noble scion, Cass Trump, a man famous only for his stupidity. The moment Cass laid eyes on Carnelian, he was instantly enslaved by her otherworldly charm. Saliva practically dripped from his lips as he leered at her, his gaze dissecting her figure with disgusting satisfaction. Trembling with lust, he reached out his greasy hand, desperate to claim her and grant her a new name right then and there. Smack. Carnelian slapped his hand away. "My master is still Julian. Without his permission, you are nothing but heir to me." The rebuke snapped Cass back to reality, leaving Julian wondering, was this lecherous fool really fit to wield a legendary weapon? Cass turned his rage on Julian, shouting, "What are you waiting for? Peasant, initiate the transfer ritual immediately." Sighing, Julian gestured for the noble to proceed with the naming ceremony first. After 2 minutes of straining his pig-like brain, Cass announced triumphantly to Carnelian, "Your new name shall be Castilia." The silence in the room was deafening. Even the bystanders looked confused, but Stern pressed on. "As long as Julian consents, the transfer is valid." Julian glanced at the deadly girl, hesitating. Was she truly willing to become the servant of a man like Cass Trump? To his surprise, she showed no reluctance, urging him with her eyes to get it over with. Julian nodded. He had no choice. Logic dictated that even a trashy knight was a better master for a weapon than a simple cook. Carnelian lowered her head, mistaking it for submission. Cass reached out again, his fingers twitching to stroke her porcelain face. He leaned in close, treating her like a shiny new toy he couldn't wait to break. Bam! She backhanded him across the room. "Get your filth off me, you moron. It seems the universe prefers the name Carnelian." The transfer had failed. Julian's spiritual power was so pitifully weak, he couldn't even issue the command to release her. How on earth did trash like him awaken her? Even Carnelian was baffled, yet a wave of relief washed over her. At least she wouldn't be stuck with a hideous name like Castilia. But Cass Trump wasn't about to let such a prize catch slip through his fingers so easily. With eyes as cold as ice, he unsheathed his slender rapier, intent on piercing Julian's heart. After all, a lowly peasant like you is nothing but trash. If I cannot obtain it peacefully, I shall simply take it by force. He sneered, adding arrogantly, "Consider dying by my blade your greatest honor, Julian." However, the moment he lunged, Carnelian moved faster than the eye could follow. In a split second, Cass Trump's head was severed from his shoulders. "Since you believe death is such an honor, then go ahead and enjoy it," she declared, gracefully sheathing her greatsword. "I made the right choice, didn't I, my master?" By this point, Julian was trembling uncontrollably, witnessing his sheer terror. Carnelian offered a mocking smile. "Oh, is this the first time my master has seen a slaughter? You had better accustom yourself to such sights if you intend to remain by my side." As Carnelian stepped closer, Julian scrambled backward in panic, stammering repeatedly, "Stay back, do not come near me." Carnelian merely sighed and replied calmly, "Relax, no seal would ever harm their own master. Even if you are weak, you hold my contract. If you were to die suddenly, it would be quite troublesome for me." Suddenly, Cass Trump's guards encircled them, blades drawn to arrest the murderer. But Carnelian simply scoffed at them. "You hardly have the time to worry about me right now, do you?" It was then that the realization struck everyone. The seal that had belonged to the fallen noble began to glitch, its energy turning violent and unstable. One guard shrieked in absolute terror. "The connection is lost. The seal has gone rogue. Kill it immediately." Before the command could even land, a massive blade crushed his skull. The masterless seal had begun its massacre. Nobody could halt the rampage. To make matters worse, the second seal's link also shattered, plunging it into madness. A guard attempted a sneak attack, only to be blasted 2 meters backward by a shockwave of raw aura. Julian watched in confusion. Why are they attacking their own allies? Carnelian explained coldly, "Once a master dies, the seal loses all reason. They become mindless beasts, slaughtering everything in sight. That is the horror of a severed connection." Ugh. Julian's blood ran cold. When she said she would be in trouble if he died, did she mean she would turn into a monster like that? After she confirmed his fears, Julian asked if there was a cure. "Their minds will reset eventually," she noted, "but only after the ground is soaked in blood." In moments, the 2 berserk seals had annihilated the entire squad of guards. With no enemies left standing, the creatures turned their hollow gazes toward the powerless Julian. A blade swung down to end his life. Carnelian interposed her massive greatsword, blocking the lethal strike with casual ease. The 2 disconnected seals glared at her with feral intensity. Carnelian looked at her fallen kin with a hint of pity. "I have no desire to fight my own kind, but since you seek to kill my master, I have no choice but to destroy you." With a single, flawless motion, she executed a draw cut. Carnelian cleaved her opponent cleanly in half. It was a display of skill worthy of the champion of the 1974 Southeast Asian Combat Tournament. Julian was left speechless. Although he had gutted thousands of fish in his life, he had never felt the paralyzing grip of true fear until now. The villagers watching from the shadows whispered in awe, "How can that woman move like that to fell a powerful seal with one strike? Who is she?" Then, a voice cried out, "That is Julian's seal." Amidst the field of corpses, silence fell. Julian stood frozen like a statue. For a moment, his mind rejected the reality, hoping it was all a nightmare. But the warm blood splattered across his clothes was undeniably real. The metallic stench overwhelmed him, and he fell to his knees, retching. Carnelian approached him. "Are you still intact?" Hearing her voice, Julian slowly looked up. "Thank you, Carnelian. Because of you, I am alive." But Carnelian raised a hand to stop him. "Do not misunderstand my intentions. If my master dies, I lose my rationality. If low-level seals cause this much destruction when their link is severed, what catastrophe do you think would occur if a high-level seal like myself lost control?" Julian, still vomiting, continued to thank her regardless. Carnelian sighed, shaking her head. What a useless master. Not only is he a coward, but he lacks the mana to even issue a transfer command. Julian could only apologize repeatedly, promising he would find a solution to his weakness. 2.5 hours later, the silence of the small fishing village returned. The villagers instinctively began damage control, packing up the bodies and calling the cemetery's one-stop cleanup service. Carnelian struck a pose with her greatsword, looking glamorous, while Julian gazed into the distance, burdened by guilt. Suddenly, Stern tracked them down. "So, what is the plan now?" Carnelian glared at him. "Do we need a plan? You just murdered a lord's son and destroyed his seals." "Do you think the Lord will let this slide?" Stern asked incredulously. Carnelian remained unfazed. "He is merely a regional lord. Even if he marches his entire army here, I can exterminate them in under a minute." Stern rubbed his temples in frustration. "I'm not questioning your killing speed. Wait, do you mean you'd kill them slowly? That costs extra?" Stern sighed, defeated. "I didn't expect you to be so cold-blooded, but I suppose I should have known. Even if you slaughter every last soldier here, the seal will eventually shatter, unleashing forces far deadlier than before. Neighboring kingdoms will not sit idly by. We might even face the wrath of the Imperial army itself." Carnelian stared at Stern with cold amusement. Mobilizing an entire army for the sake of a rural lord's son? These humans have too much time on their hands. But Stern shook his head solemnly. "That is the pride of the nobility." Carnelian remained unimpressed by the threat. "Let the kingdom's legions come. Give me 2 days, and I will erase them all." Before her arrogance could spiral further, Julian cut in sharply. "If we fight, every innocent soul in this village will be massacred. Is that not the law of the world? The strong devour the weak. Why should this place be any different?" Julian's fist trembled with defiance, his voice shaking but resolute. "Weakness is not a crime punishable by death." Carnelian simply raised a hand, pointing accusingly at the village. "Where was that righteous fire when that pig of a noble was alive? Do you truly believe he would have shown you mercy? You lack the strength to fight, and your heart is even more fragile. Tell me, my master, what is your grand plan?" The air grew heavy with despair, until Julian made a shocking declaration. He would go to the Lord himself and beg for forgiveness. Carnelian laughed, a chilling sound. "You seek to explain away a murder. You killed his son, yet you expect him to smile and forgive you. If you were in his shoes, would you accept such an apology? It is madness, but we cannot know the outcome if we do not try." Suddenly, Stern stepped between them. "I will go. I shall be the one to explain." Carnelian sneered. "Have you all gone insane, or did you take the wrong medicine today?" Yet Stern's gaze was unwavering. He was confident he could spin the narrative. The shift in allegiance. The battle, he would frame it all as an unavoidable tragedy of fate. "Diplomacy is my battlefield, not Julian's." With that decision made, twilight soon descended upon the land. Carnelian stood silently before the fresh graves of the fallen seals. For a fleeting second, a shadow of sorrow passed through her ancient eyes. Julian approached her quietly. Carnelian immediately masked her emotions, her face returning to a mask of indifference. "What do you want?" Julian beamed with excitement. "Stern is back." Carnelian blinked in genuine confusion. He actually returned alive. Are his limbs still attached to his body? Against all odds? Stern had brought incredible news, but there was a catch. They had to apologize in person to seal the deal. Julian cheered like a child who had just been given candy. I knew it. Stern could convince a demon to become a saint. Carnelian remained skeptical. A simple apology. What father in this world would willingly shake hands with his child's killer? Stern looked at her coldly, calling out her cynicism. "You see the world in extremes. Carnelian, have thousands of years only taught you the ugliness of humanity, regardless of your doubts? I have no interest in your pessimistic riddles." Julian grabbed her arm, his eyes pleading. "Please, Carnelian, just come with me. Trust us." Defeated by his earnest gaze, Carnelian let out a long, helpless sigh. "If my master commands it, I have no choice but to obey." And so, under the cover of night, they set off for the Lord's castle with a humble donkey. During a break, Julian was shocked to discover a strange truth about his servant. She required no food. The ambient mana in the air was her sustenance, much like a plant absorbing sunlight. This revelation filled Julian's head with endless questions. Carnelian rubbed her temples, regretting she ever mentioned it. Forget it. A mortal mind need not understand. But seeing Julian enjoying his spicy strips, she snatched the bag from his hands instantly. "Hey, you said you don't need to eat. Why steal my spicy strips?" "I already licked those. Isn't that an indirect kiss?" Before the words fully left his mouth, Carnelian spat the snack out in disgust. Julian, undeterred, pulled another pack from his inventory and pressed her about her past. Who was your previous master? They must have been incredible, right? Carnelian's chewing stopped. She went completely silent for 2 full minutes. Finally, she looked at him. Boy, do you know the concept of privacy? Julian tilted his head. Privacy? Is that a high-tier magic spell? Yes, it is a powerful curse that forbids others from prying into my soul. I am under that spell, so ask no more. Now, finish your spicy strips and go to sleep. She turned her back to him, ending the conversation. Julian drifted into a deep slumber, unaware that Carnelian remained awake, staring into the darkness. Her heart was too heavy for dreams. The next morning arrived. They finally reached the imposing gates of the Lord's castle. A steward stepped forward to receive them. But the moment his eyes landed on Carnelian's massive greatsword, he recoiled. Halt by the Lord's decree. No weapons are permitted inside. He reached out to confiscate it. Carnelian's aura flared, her eyes burning with murderous intent. The last man who touched my blade is currently dining with his ancestors. Are you certain you wish to join him? The servant snatched his hand back, terror written all over his face. Julian panicked, trying to talk Carnelian down. Please, just follow the rules. But she was immovable as a mountain. If my sword cannot enter, then you face the lion's den alone. Realizing she would sooner burn the castle down than disarm, the servant crumbled. He sprinted back inside to seek instructions. 2 minutes later, he returned with a strained smile. The Lord had granted special permission the sword stays. As the duo stepped through the heavy iron gates, they entered the lion's den. The Lord sat upon his throne, eyes shadowing a sinister intent, flanked by a sea of silent servants. Julian, innocent and humble, bowed low before the ruler. The Lord wore a mask of deep grief and murmured, I have heard of the tragedy and your involvement. Guilt washed over Julian. He immediately fell to his knees. We have come to atone for your son's death. But the Lord remained silent, merely beckoning him closer with a heavy, deceitful hand. As Julian walked toward the throne, Carnelian's eyes narrowed like a hawk. The Lord's calm demeanor was unnatural, too reasonable for a grieving father. Her instincts screamed danger. Seeing the boy approach with hesitation, the Lord's patience snapped. He rose from his seat and lunged with supernatural speed. In a heartbeat, his hand clamped around Julian's throat, hoisting the boy into the air like a rag doll. So, you are the brat called Julian, the Lord sneered. Now, instantly, the servants dropped their disguises, encircling Carnelian and chanting a high-level binding spell. It was an ambush. Those were not servants, but elite battle mages hiding their mana signatures. Ethereal chains materialized from the void, wrapping tight around Carnelian's limbs as the magical bindings dug into her skin. A grimace of agony twisted her face. With total dominance established, the Lord leaned in to whisper a soul-crushing truth to the suffocating Julian. Your friend Stern made a deal. The Lord hissed. He said as long as the village was spared, anything was acceptable. He offered you up, used the orphan's life to repay the village's debt. That boy, Stern, born in filth, yet ruthless enough to sell his friend. Brilliant, isn't he? The revelation shattered Julian's spirit before his body hit the floor. The Lord hurled him aside. Julian skidded across the cold stone, consciousness fading into the darkness. What a naive fool, walking into the tiger's mouth willingly. The Lord smirked, ready to execute the final phase, seal the weapon, Carnelian, and execute the boy. But suddenly, killing intent exploded from the bound woman. I knew it. Carnelian growled, her eyes burning with fury. The mind of a countryside trash lord is pitifully easy to read. You are still talking big even as death approaches. You dare, the Lord began, but Carnelian silenced him with action. Snap. The magical binding shattered like glass. Is this your best? Her great sword erupted with golden aura, vaporizing the remaining chains in a blinding flash. Did you think mere toys could hold me? She slammed her blade into the inscribed floor. Boom, a shockwave of pure mana blasted outward, sending the disguised mages flying like leaves in a storm. The mages were knocked unconscious instantly. The Lord's jaw dropped in horror. Impossible. How are you not sealed? The Lord stammered. Did you walk into this trap knowingly? Carnelian stepped forward, her presence overwhelming. You should have realized your fate the moment your pig-headed son perished at my hands. Panic set in. The Lord screamed desperately for his ace in the hole, summoning his hidden assassin. But Carnelian was faster. Without looking, she hurled her massive blade into the shadows. Thud. The hidden assassin was skewered before he could even move. Was that rat your secret weapon? Seeing his trump card annihilated, true terror finally gripped the Lord's heart. Now, Carnelian smirked. Who is the real fool here? Carnelian began an ancient chant. The atmosphere grew heavy as mana swirled violently around her, shaking the castle foundations. The Lord trembled, realizing too late she wasn't just a warrior. She was a dual cultivator monster proficient in both sword and magic. Disappear, she commanded coldly. A pillar of light pierced the heavens. The earth groaned, and with a deafening roar, the castle began to collapse. Following a catastrophic explosion, the Lord's fortress was reduced to dust. When Julian finally awoke, he found himself shielded by Carnelian amidst the ruins. He looked around frantically, the destruction overwhelming his senses. Where is the Lord? Carnelian silently raised a finger, pointing to a pile of rubble. Nothing remained but dust and regret. In that moment, Julian's innocence died a little. You knew it was a trap from the start. Carnelian nodded grimly. The apple does not fall far from the rotten tree. Like father, like son, neither was a good man. Mercy to such trash only invites disaster. Harden your heart, Julian. Useless sympathy will only get you killed. But her work wasn't finished. Carnelian turned away, her expression darkening with murderous intent. There is still one loose end to cut. Back at the night fishing village, whispers spread like wildfire. Why was the terrifying seal targeting Stern? Were they not brothers in arms? Carnelian approached the traitor, her blade drawn. I grant you 2 final words. Make them count. Stern closed his eyes, accepting his death, yet spat out a pathetic excuse that Carnelian found laughable. I had no choice. It was for the village. The words rang hollow. Julian, slow to process the betrayal, stared in disbelief. Wait, Carnelian, stop, Julian cried out. You never said you would execute him. He was forced into a corner. He did it for the greater good. Carnelian's gaze pierced through Julian. If you were him, would you have sold your friend? She sneered, using no choice to mask his own cowardice. How repulsive. Julian fell silent, the truth striking him hard. He would never have stooped so low. Yet, his heart could not bear the bloodshed. He did not want Stern to pay with his life. He shoved Carnelian's blade aside. As your master, I command you spare him. Carnelian paused, then leveled her sword at the trembling Stern once more. Human nature is inherently selfish, she stated coldly. You asked about my past masters. Her eyes held eons of pain. For thousands of years, my body and soul have been used, betrayed, and defiled by people just like him. To be used merely as a tool by unworthy masters, only to be cast back into the void. What? Such is the tragic destiny of a living seal. As Carnelian's heart cracked open, revealing her secret pain, Julian reached out. His touch was gentle, yet firm. I cannot imagine the suffering you have endured. But hear this vow. I will never treat you that way. I will help you. Trust in me. His words struck a chord. Carnelian fell into a heavy silence, letting out a helpless sigh. But, in a heartbeat, her demeanor shifted completely. Fine, I shall spare his life. Honestly, for a master to beg his own weapon, I could nearly die from secondhand embarrassment. Hearing he would live to see another day, Stern bowed his head in guilt. Thank her, not me. Julian, with a heart of gold, chose forgiveness over vengeance. Though your betrayal cuts deep, I know you acted to protect our village. Suddenly, Carnelian cut in. You said you would help me. Did you not? Julian admitted he was lost on the method, yet promised to dedicate his very soul to the task. Her demands were simple yet daunting. First, become a knight. Then, find her a wealthy and superior master to take his place. Strangely, Julian found her logic irrefutable. Carnelian's gaze drifted to the horizon. We must reach the capital. Only there will we find answers. Seizing the moment, Stern offered a lifeline. A merchant carriage leaves for the city tomorrow. He promised to arrange their escape. Yet, the proud seal showed no gratitude. Walking away without a backward glance, only Julian turned, his eyes filled with reluctance. Stern could only bow in shame. Little did they know, this was a final goodbye. Fate would never let their paths cross again. Dawn broke, and Carnelian emerged in fresh attire, radiating confidence, but her mood soured upon seeing Julian. "Why are you burdened with so much junk?" Julian puffed out his chest. "Humans require preparation. We are not like seals. There are their essentials one cannot leave behind." Just then, the rhythmic clatter of hooves echoed. The merchant's carriage ground to a halt before them. Carnelian wasted no time. Where can I find the highest concentration of knights? And I mean true warriors, not rabble. The merchant stroked his chin and thought, Beersheba. A royal duel takes place there in 1 week. A royal duel? You mean a blood sport where knights slaughter one another for the king's amusement? The merchant flinched. Hush. Such treasonous words could cost us our heads if a knight overheard. But Carnelian only scoffed with disdain. Let them come. If they annoy me, I will silence them with a single strike. Sweating nervously, the merchant proposed a detour. We are headed to Slock. From there, take a ship. It is the only way to reach Beersheba before the tournament begins. And so, their journey began. But Julian's face remained clouded with sorrow. It was not easy to abandon the only home he had ever known. Seeing his distress, even the cold-hearted Carnelian fell into deep thought. She broke the silence softly. Partings always arrived like a sudden storm. Julian blinked, confused by her sudden poetic wax. His lack of reaction made Carnelian flush with awkwardness. Why is communication with humans so exhausting? She tried a different approach. Do not despair. Think of this merely as a vacation. Once we find a worthy master in the city, you are free to return to your little village. They arrived at the port, only to face disaster. Fully booked. The next vessel wouldn't depart until after the duel concluded. Carnelian's eyes narrowed dangerously. Simple. I knock a few passengers unconscious, and we take their spots. Julian immediately protested. Fine then. Shall we hijack the entire ship instead? Cold sweat drenched Julian's back. That is absolutely not what I meant. No crimes. Suddenly, whispers from the crowd caught his ear. Did you hear Lord Castro's castle? It vanished into thin air. Julian leaned in, voice trembling. We must keep a low profile, quietly. But just as they turned to leave, a shadow fell over them. Pardon the intrusion. I couldn't help but overhear your plight. Do you seek passage to Beersheba? Fortune smiles upon you. We have exactly 2 spots remaining. Hope lit up Julian's face, and he opened his mouth to accept. But Carnelian cut in, her gaze sharp as a blade. Accidentally, every captain in this port claims to be full, yet you miraculously have room. The stranger laughed nervously, wiping his brow. If you wish to reject my kindness, that is your choice. Julian stepped between them, desperate to reach the duel on time. We are interested. May we inspect the vessel? The man's grin widened. Naturally, but you must hurry. Finding a ship to Beersheba right now is harder than plucking stars from the sky. Worn down by Julian's pleading, the exhausted Carnelian reluctantly followed. One has to wonder, is the boy pure of heart or simply a fool? Tragically, Carnelian's instincts were razor sharp. The man, Bernie, was no merchant. He belonged to a notorious smuggling crew. And our heroes had just walked right into the predator's den. A bad feeling gnawed at Carnelian as she stepped onto the creaking deck. The trap snapped shut instantly. Bernie turned, his friendly mask dissolving into a cruel sneer. Such a pity, but I'm afraid you two will have to be separated. Men and women are strictly separated on this vessel, and the atmosphere instantly turned ice cold. Julian panicked, frantically denying any romantic connection between them. But Bernie's eyes glinted with mischief. Oh, not defined yet, he teased, making the air thick with tension before showing them to their quarters. He smirked all the way to the cabins. But upon arrival, Julian froze. The passengers inside looked lifeless, their eyes void of hope. Suddenly, the heavy iron door slammed shut behind him. Julian flinched in terror. He clawed at the handle, but a voice rang out from the shadows. Give it up. That lock won't open until we set sail. This was a ghost ship. No registration, no records. If a soul vanished here, the world would never know. A chilling realization struck him. Human traffickers. His mind screamed Carnelian's name. Desperate, he slammed his body against the steel, but it didn't budge. Then, he spotted a heavy crate. With a surge of adrenaline, he smashed the lock and burst into the corridor, sprinting to find her. He tore through room after room, panic rising like a tide, but she was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, A terrifying rumble shook the hull. Julian's instincts screamed danger. He scrambled toward the deck, a silent prayer on his lips. Please, Carnelian, do not destroy the ship. We need to reach Beersheba. He burst into the open air, heart pounding. But instead of chaos, Carnelian waved cheerfully. Well, look at you. I didn't think my apprentice had the guts to smash a door down. Did you come to rescue me? She asked. No, I came to stop you, Julian yelled. Carnelian's expression crumbled into theatrical betrayal. You think I'm a monster? I just sensed evil intent. I investigated and found these scumbags looked like slavers, so I handled it. But suddenly, Bernie crawled from the wreckage, screaming, "We are innocent." The victims emerged from the cabins, but instead of gratitude, they turned on Carnelian with venomous accusations. You monster, what did you do to them? Carnelian stood there, utterly baffled by their rage. The truth was revealed. Bernie wasn't a slaver, he was a smuggler. He disguised the poor as cargo to bypass Beersheba's brutal entry restrictions. The weight of their mistake crashed down on them. Guilt washed over both Julian and Carnelian. Luckily, Bernie sighed. He hadn't explained the situation, so he decided not to press charges. However, his eyes narrowed with curiosity. Who are you? Carnelian lied instantly. I am a mage, and this is my apprentice knight. She puffed out her chest. He may look green, but we are on vital business for the Empire. Ignore his foolish face. I assure you, my power is... Bernie cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. Wait, don't you know, during the royal duel season, knights get luxury ships, free private suites, Michelin star banquets. Carnelian looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Wait, free? Her soul shattered. If I knew that, I would have made him wear the armor from the start. Bernie grinned like a shark. Well, we don't have luxury here, and you two owe me for the damage. Julian stammered. I spent my last copper on the ticket. Bernie tilted his head, a devilish idea forming. No money, then pay with your bodies. 2.5 hours later, Julian stood over a bubbling cauldron, sweating as he stirred with intense focus. Carnelian was reduced to a waitress, serving massive platters. Eat up, she forced a smile. If we run out of whale, I'll go hunt a kraken. Hours passed before Carnelian collapsed in exhaustion. These sailors had bottomless stomachs. This is the best meal we've had in years, one sailor cheered. For a knight, that boy is a culinary genius. Flames of irritation erupted in Carnelian's eyes. Don't praise him. Cooking is literally the only useful skill he has. She composed herself and turned to the captain. Are we square? Bernie's grin widened. Not even close. That was just dinner. Bernie laughed. Now that our bellies are full, it's time for the show. The crew lined up to arm wrestle Carnelian. Poor souls. They had no idea they were challenging a monster. 2.5 days later, Landho, they bid farewell to Bernie and stepped into the chaotic heart of Beersheba's market. Julian's eyes went wide. It was his first time in the capital, and everything sparkled. He gawked like a country bumpkin, which drove Carnelian crazy. Stop staring, she hissed. Remember the plan, act like a knight. She was obsessed with the free food for knights rule, but Julian wasn't listening. He pointed a trembling finger forward. Look, standing there was a creature from nightmares, a beast man. Carnelian snapped. I said list. She stopped, realizing his genuine shock. She sighed and switched to teacher mode. It's an orc, Julian, one of the demi-human races. I forget how sheltered you are. They used to be savage, she explained darkly, but humans captured them, broke them. Now they are nothing but tamed pets. And it's not just the orcs. For centuries, humanity had built its empire on the backs of the enslaved, capturing fairies, cave giants, and other mystic races to serve in chains. Julian halted in his tracks, his heart heavy with the cruelty of it all. But his thoughts were shattered as the very earth began to tremble beneath his feet. Panic swept through the crowd like a plague. It is Lord Kudro, they screamed, as a colossal war elephant stomped toward Julian, casting a massive shadow. The commoners prostrated themselves in terror, yet Julian remained standing, frozen like a fool. This unintended defiance ignited a spark of rage in Kudro's eyes. To a tyrant, failure to kneel was a capital offense. With a sneer, he commanded the beast to crush this insect into paste. Boom! The earth cracked. But the boy remained unharmed. Carnelian had caught the massive limb with a single hand, her strength defying all logic. Even the beast recoiled in primal fear, sensing a power that no mere mortal should possess. In a flash, Carnelian's greatsword sang through the air, one leap, one slash, and the massive creature was cleaved in twain. The merchant Kudro hit the dirt, his arrogance replaced by trembling horror. She casually adjusted her disheveled hair, looking down at him with cold eyes. What lowly merchant dares to block the path of a noble knight? Julian opened his mouth to deny being a knight, but a sharp glare from Carnelian silenced him instantly. She was playing a role, and he had better stick to the script. The merchant shook like a leaf in a storm, his mind unable to comprehend why a high-ranking knight would target him. Cold steel pressed against his face. "Hey, you mindless swine. Who gave a worm like you permission to speak?" Julian sighed in defeat at the escalation, while Carnelian seemed to be reveling in the chaos. A twisted smile curled her lips. "Fortunately for you, my knight is far more merciful than I am. He is magnanimous. Grovel at his feet, and perhaps he will deign to spare your worthless life." But Kudro's pride outweighed his fear. He refused to bow, screeching that Carnelian was despicable for attacking a defenseless man. Carnelian thrust the blade forward, grazing his skin. "Oh, so you would prefer I slaughter you right here?" The merchant's mouth snapped shut instantly. Venom filled his eyes as he glared at Julian. "I challenge you to a duel, 3 days from now. Meet me at the Royal Arena." With that declaration, he scrambled away like a rat, shouting over his shoulder, "Do not dare to run away. You hear me?" Carnelian burst into raucous laughter at the pathetic display, but Julian felt his blood run cold. A duel. He was surely dead meat. "Relax, you fool," Carnelian scoffed. "The duel he speaks of is a battle between seals, not humans." Oh. She sheathed her massive blade. Glancing at the grime on her armor, she decided, "We need an inn. I refuse to remain in this filth." Julian's panic returned, twofold. His pockets were as empty as the void itself. Why spend coin when you have a ruthless knight by your side? They arrived at the finest inn, where their infamous reputation had already preceded them. Whispers filled the lobby like smoke. Everyone knew this was the duo that nearly ended Lord Kudro's life. The terrified staff treated them like royalty, desperate to avoid offending such dangerous guests. Julian opened his mouth to confess, but wham! Carnelian punched him in the gut. She knew with her little toe that he was about to ruin their cover. She immediately caught him, feigning deep concern. "Oh no, Sir Knight. Has your old war wound opened up again?" Her voice dropped to a demonic hiss. "Did I not tell you to play the part, utter one word of denial, and you die?" Clamping her hand around his neck in a death grip, she beamed at the receptionist. "Please, process our room immediately." Safely inside, Julian hesitated, his face flushing. "Is it truly appropriate for us to share a single chamber?" Seeing his innocence, Carnelian let out a dark chuckle. My, I did not expect your mind to wander down such lewd paths. You were just as jumpy on the ship. Are you truly this dim-witted? You want to separate from your seal in enemy territory. Listen well. A seal is the knight's sword and shield. We must remain within arm's reach at all times. 2.5 hours later, Julian was crunching on an apple to pass the time when a sultry voice broke his concentration. Carnelian emerged from the bath, steam rising from her skin as she stretched languidly. Julian turned beet red instantly. "What happened to your outfit?" he stammered. She had shredded the standard issue clothes. "That conservative style stifles me. I am an avant-garde spirit, after all." She stepped closer, enjoying his terror as he whipped his head away to avoid looking. "You are moving too fast," he squeaked. "I want to get off this ride." Carnelian smirked. "What are you afraid of? Are you not supposed to be a ruthless, wandering knight?" But the teasing died instantly. Carnelian shot to her feet, sensing a monstrous aura closing in. A deep voice resonated from the hallway. "Sir Knight, are you present? I apologize for the intrusion, but Lai Dietrich requests an audience." It seemed the moment Carnelian stepped foot in Beersheba, her overwhelming power had alerted the local masters. Dietrich knew that anyone capable of awakening such a seal must be a warrior of legendary caliber. Thus, the supreme powerhouse, Dietrich, had come to inspect them personally. Before the royal duel could even commence, he intended to test the mettle of this mysterious knight himself. While Carnelian recognized the name immediately, the Dietrichs, the notorious villainous bloodline of the Empire, she sensed something strange. Despite their dark reputation, there was zero killing intent coming from them. Even so, caution was a warrior's best friend. Carnelian gripped her greatsword, muscles coiling like springs, ready to unleash hell if they made a wrong move. But Julian, realizing there was no murderous aura, threw the doors wide open. This reckless hospitality nearly gave Carnelian a heart attack, but it was too late to stop him. Miraculously, The visitors didn't attack. They bowed with perfect etiquette, stating they had simply come to pay their respects to the famous knight. With Carnelian's coaching echoing in his mind, Julian scratched his head and sheepishly admitted that, yes, he was the knight they were looking for. But Lai wasn't buying it. This awkward boy didn't look like a powerhouse. He looked like a commoner. Fortunately, Carnelian's sharp instincts caught that flicker of suspicion in Lai's eyes. She had to act fast. Julian looked less like a warrior and more like a country bumpkin who had never attended a single etiquette class in his life. To crush Lai's doubts, Carnelian stepped in with a smooth lie. My master serves no kingdom. He's a free knight training in solitude. She painted him as a recluse, wary of revealing his true lineage to the world. Julian caught the signal instantly, playing the part of the eccentric master as he invited the guests to sit and talk. Yet, Lai's suspicion only deepened. The sword beside him was clumsy, heavy, and shockingly it had no edge whatsoever. Most would think it useless, but this blunt instrument could cleave an armored elephant in two. Even Julian found himself wondering about the weapon's paradox. Was it the footwork? The stance? What secret technique allowed a dull blade to possess such devastating killing power? Carnelian's voice turned philosophical. The true blade lies within the heart. If the wielder's soul is dull, even a legendary sword cannot cut a single leaf. Besides, she added with a smirk, a blunt edge is practical. I can sleep hugging it without slicing my own head off. The cold steel is perfect for hot summer nights. Behold, the mad sword, Misteltein. She could feel Julian silently admiring the cool naming sense. Just then, Lai and her seal approached, warning them with grave expressions to be careful during the upcoming duel. Carnelian waved them off with a confident grin. Careful, please. This little spar won't even count as a warm-up for a warrior of my caliber. It turned out they had bonded over drinks the previous night, forging a quick sisterhood in the tavern, though a drunken Carnelian had nearly blown Julian's cover and revealed he was a fake knight. The match began. Carnelian stepped into the arena while Julian and Kudra watched from the stands. Her opponent's seal was Gashak, a massive man whose body odor was a biological weapon in itself. Carnelian pinched her nose in visible disgust, an insult that sent Gashak into a blind, blazing rage. He launched the first strike, his axe smashing down with earth-shattering force, but when the dust cleared, Carnelian was gone, reappearing instantly behind him like a ghost. Are you copying your master? You move like a sloth stuck in molasses. Ugh. Gashak swung backward blindly, hitting nothing but air. Carnelian vaulted high, executing 2.5 perfect flips before sticking the landing like a gymnast. But the crowd booed relentlessly. Stop running and fight. Aren't you supposed to be a high-level seal? They deemed her a fraud, but little did they know the truth. It wasn't fear holding her back. It was hygiene. She physically couldn't bring herself to enter the orbit of such a foul-smelling opponent. Gashak roared, swinging his axe again. This time, Carnelian didn't retreat. She sidestepped with liquid grace, slipping past his guard. With a snap of her leg, she delivered a whip kick right to his backside, sending him sprawling face first into the dirt. I'm not running away. I'm just social distancing from your stench. Her mockery only poured oil on the fire of Gashak's fury. He leaped high, bringing the axe down with killing intent, but Carnelian didn't flinch. She caught the massive weapon with a single hand. Did you really think you were on my level? With a casual flick of her wrist, she sent his weapon flying. Defeated and awestruck, Gashak fell to his knees in surrender. Carnelian took aim at his heart. A pity. You only suffer because you follow a weak master. Gashak trembled, thinking his end had come, but Carnelian lowered her guard, the killing intent vanishing from her eyes. Ending it like this is boring, she declared. Let's give the crowd a finale they'll never forget. Suddenly, she began chanting ancient spells. A pillar of energy erupted toward the heavens, sending the audience into a frenzy of excitement. She could use high-level magic as the chant concluded. The sky turned red, and countless fireballs began to rain down like Judgment Day. But Carnelian's face went pale. Wait, that's not me. The fireballs weren't part of the show. They were indiscriminately bombing the arena. Panic erupted, the crowd scrambled for the exits, but the chaos only made escape impossible. Just as death rained from above, a shimmering barrier materialized. Icarus had arrived, shielding the civilians and buying precious seconds for evacuation. Nightlai's voice cut through the noise. Everyone take cover. This is a surprise attack from the enemy nation. She charged into the fray, bringing order to the chaos, but her next move left Seal Icarus completely stunned. She was heading for the crumbling city walls, intent on holding the line all by herself. Icarus! Defend against the airstrikes. Only your barrier can stop the siege weapons. Icarus hesitated, fearing for her safety, but duty left him no choice. He cast a defensive enchantment on her blade, a final gift of protection. Gripping the glowing weapon, Lai turned to face the oncoming army, shouting her final command. If I fall in battle, you must find a new master immediately. In the chaos of war, certainty is a luxury, and in an unlinked state, your power is too dangerous to remain unclaimed. Icarus squeezed his eyes shut, fighting back the grief. With a deep, respectful bow to his master, he turned and rushed toward his own battlefield. Under the cover of night, Lai gazed at the carnage ahead. Her eyes burned with steel determination as she vanished into the fray to provide critical support. Meanwhile, Carnelian munched on snacks with casual indifference. Julian broke the silence, asking, "Why did Lady Lai refuse our aid back there?" It all traced back to the dueling grounds. Carnelian had effortlessly crushed the enemy forces that dared to interrupt them. Annoyed by the rude interruption, she had offered Knight Lai assistance, but to everyone's surprise, Lai had declined. As a sworn knight of Lysenbel, she insisted on handling the threat alone. She urged them to retreat to the inner city inn, where safety was still guaranteed. Carnelian wiped crumbs from her face and explained, "Knights are warriors who stake their very lives on what they choose to protect. But remember, you are a free knight, and free knights do not bind their convictions to the flags of nations. Some call it a narrow-minded heart, others call it the true way of the sword. Asking a free knight to fight for a country is like asking them to abandon their own soul." Her tone suddenly shifted, dropping into seriousness. "Besides, interfering without the strength to back it up, that is just a nuisance." Julian lowered his head, frustration gnawing at him. Seeing his spirit break, Carnelian smirked. "However, you possess a seal of terrifying power, one that completely outclasses your current ability." Julian's eyes went wide, disbelief washing over him. Carnelian simply responded with a knowing, enigmatic smile. Back on the blood-soaked battlefield, Knight Lai's arrival turned the tides, swiftly bringing order to the chaos. But from the shadows, a predator watched. He noted how she hadn't changed, looking so fragile, yet possessing a core of iron. He drew his blade, launching a silent ambush. But Lai's sixth sense screamed of imminent death. She spun around, her blade singing through the air to intercept. The assassin smiled, his voice dripping with malice. "Long time no see, Lai." Lai gripped her hilt with both hands, struggling against his weight. Her eyes blazed with recognition. "Jared, I should have known." His blade glistened with lethal poison. Instead of dodging, she made a reckless choice. She blocked the poisonous steel with her own arm. Only she could stop a monster like Jared. Every second wasted meant doom for her allies. Ignoring the pain, Lai didn't parry. She drove her sword viciously toward Jared's kidney. The strike was shallow, failing to pierce deep, yet Jared reeled back in shock. He never imagined Lai would trade her own life just for a chance to kill him. Already, the toxins were racing through her veins. Lai's body seized up, paralyzed. Jared grinned, raising his blade to deliver the final execution. But just as he lunged, his seal's expression twisted into pure terror, screaming a silent warning of approaching doom. A split second later, a shockwave crashed down between them, shattering the earth. As the dust settled, two imposing silhouettes emerged. Carnelian stood there, heaving her massive greatsword onto her shoulder. "Aren't you boys a little old to be bullying one person? Ganging up like cowards! How pathetic!" Lai watched in stunned silence. She never expected the wandering knight Julian and his mentor to intervene. Carnelian raised her colossal blade, her aura flaring. "Step aside. I will finish this battle." Karina's eyes widened in horror. The woman standing before her was the nightmare who had slaughtered her previous master. Rage eclipsed her reason. "I will kill you," Karina screamed, launching a flurry of strikes. But Carnelian's greatsword blocked them as if they were nothing but feathers. "Isn't that a bit rude for a first greeting?" Carnelian teased. But as she studied her attacker, a flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes. She swung her blade, the sheer wind pressure forcing Karina back. "I feel like we've met. Do you truly remember the weight of your past sins?" Karina prepared to rush in again, but Jared's hand clamped down on her shoulder. Carnelian's appearance had shattered their strategy. The scales of battle had tipped disastrously against them. Jared signaled a retreat, but Karina, blinded by vengeance, refused to let her target escape. Jared's voice dropped to a freezing whisper. Do you plan to disobey me? Do you wish to die as a mere tool? Karina bit her lip, forced to swallow her hatred. She shot Carnelian a look of pure venom. Just you wait. I will come for your head soon. Sure. I'll wash up and wait for you. As Jared's forces vanished into the shadows, the battle came to an abrupt end. Back at the Heman war camp, Commander O'Neill slammed his fist on the table, demanding to know why Jared had broken their pact. Victory had been within their grasp. Jared scoffed cold-heartedly. You are the one who failed to provide accurate intelligence. Beyond Lai and Icarus, there was another seal present, a monster of the highest caliber. O'Neill froze. You mean Lizenbell has another knight on par with Lai? Jared looked at him with utter disdain. You are truly useless. You started a war without even knowing the enemy's true strength. O'Neill's blood ran cold. He realized the rumors were true. The ruthless wandering knight had likely pledged her sword to Lizenbell. Jared turned to leave, tossing the contract aside. Consider our deal void. Go ahead and tell the world I ruined your victory. I do not care. In this unforgiving world, boasting is the only luxury the weak can truly afford. Lai had managed to escape the jaws of death, but the poison still lingered in her veins. Her only hope for a complete cure lay within the walls of the royal city. Yet, the physical pain paled in comparison to the storm raging in her heart. Why had Jared, the man who pledged to build a family with her just 2.5 years ago, returned as a mercenary out for her blood? Her spiraling thoughts were suddenly silenced by a sharp knock at the door. A messenger arrived bearing a fruit basket and a royal decree. His Majesty summoned the heroes who protected Belsheba to Lisbel's capital for a formal commendation. In a moment of sudden honesty, Julian dropped a bombshell. He confessed he was no noble knight, but merely a humble cook with a knack for butchering whales. However, Knight Lai didn't even blink. She simply smirked, admitting she had seen through his disguise long ago. Still, his contribution to saving Lisbel was an absolute reality. Carnelian chimed in with a grin. Go and accept your glory. You are destined for a massive reward. Then, her expression turned serious as she addressed Lai. It is clear that you and that mercenary, Jared, share a complicated history. Your blades clashed with lethal intent, yet your eyes told a different story. It seemed neither of you truly wished for the other's death. Seeing the shadow fall over Knight Lai's face, Carnelian quickly retreated. She assured her that some scars were best left unspoken. The truth was tragic. They shared the same master and were once betrothed. Just as Julian's curiosity piqued about their fall from grace, the atmosphere shifted. Carnelian sensed a chilling, murderous intent. Icarus moved with lightning speed to shield his master. In the next heartbeat, the windows exploded inward in a shower of glass. Carnelian tackled Julian to safety, while Icarus deployed a shimmering barrier. Through the debris stepped Jared, his seal pulsing with ominous power. I am here to end this. Lai, draw your blade. Carnelian moved to intervene, but a devastating fist suddenly rushed toward her face. She barely evaded the blow, but the force alone drew blood. Karina unleashed a relentless barrage, forcing Carnelian out of the room and away from her allies. For a split second, the pressure was suffocating. Staring down Karina, who had hunted her down, fury ignited in Carnelian's eyes. Do you truly wish to die today? Meanwhile, inside the room, Jared raised his heavy blade. The pests are gone. Did you think a mere puppet seal could hold me back? But Lai made a shocking command. She ordered Icarus to stand guard over Julian instead of her. She was determined to settle the score with Jared with her own 2 hands. This resolve caught even the ruthless mercenary off guard. He hadn't expected such composure from a wounded warrior, but he was not one to show mercy to a woman. A poisoned Lai stood no chance against his full might. Jared sneered, declaring that the legend of Knight Lai would end here. Yet, as he prepared the execution strike, a flicker of hesitation stalled his blade. He looked down at her panting form with disdain. Look at how pathetic you have become. You are a disgrace to the title of Blue Raptor. With a brutal slash, he sent her weapon flying across the room. Lai collapsed to her knees, her strength completely spent. Jared's cold steel hovered inches from her throat. It seemed this was truly the end for her. But just as the death blow descended, his sword was violently deflected. Icarus had shattered his resonance link, defying her direct order. He roared that a seal's only purpose is to protect their master at all costs. This defiance only fueled Jared's rage. He shifted his target, launching a catastrophic punch at the spirit. Icarus desperately raised a barrier. But against Jared's barrage, It shattered like glass. The spirit took the full force of the impact, critically wounded. As Jared raised his sword to exorcise the spirit, a shadow flashed. Lai surged forward, knocking him back with a burst of desperate strength. "I am your opponent. Leave him out of this." Seeing the fire return to Lai's eyes, Jared suddenly lowered his weapon. A dark laughter bubbled up from his chest. "Finally, you show me the face I remember." The human woman hidden beneath that cold knight's mask. To everyone's shock, he sheathed his blade and turned to leave. But in his wake, Lai discovered a small object left on the floor. It was the antidote to her poison. With her life secured, the group prepared to embark on the perilous journey to the royal city. Little did they know, they were walking into a lion's den. Far away in Hisbakong, the emperor had received an ancient decree. Following the will of the first emperor of Oban Bahar, orders were issued to capture Carnelian alive. The empire's strongest knight, wielding dual high-level seals, was already on the hunt. To unleash such a monster against the current Carnelian was overkill of the highest degree. On the road, Carnelian glanced nervously at Julian, who had maintained a stony silence. Guilt gnawed at her. Had she pushed him too far? The previous night, he had asked if her true name was Garang. Although Carnelian admitted it, she had coldly refused to share the dark history attached to it. Julian hadn't pressed for answers then, but the silence now was deafening. She feared the matter was far from unresolved. Just as Carnelian spiraled into panic, Julian finally spoke. "I'm exhausted. Carnelian, is there actually a village ahead, or are we walking to the afterlife?" Carnelian realized with relief that he wasn't angry, just completely drained. She pointed eagerly toward the horizon. "It is just 2.5 kilometers more. You will definitely survive." But when the weary travelers finally stumbled into the village, trouble was waiting for them. "Hey, you two, if you want to step foot in this village, you have to pay the toll. If your pockets are empty, I'll take that sword that's bigger than me." Looking at this brat trying to act tough, Carnelian couldn't help but burst into laughter. This mockery ignited a spark of fury within young Raspel. "Silence, I am the favored blade of the Blue Raptor, Lady Lai herself." Yet, his outburst only served to fuel Carnelian's amusement, causing her laughter to ring out even louder. "Witness the fiery spirit of this hatchling," she teased, wiping a tear from her eye. "Perhaps, master, you should take a page from his book," Raspel retorted, his face flushed with indignation. "Listen well, in a world gone mad, there is no place for children on the battlefield. A minor cannot bear the weight of a knight's vow. Continue your deception, and that true knight over there will deliver swift justice." At the mere mention of Julian's status, the fire in Raspel's eyes shifted to pure admiration. "Is it true? Are you a master of the blade? I beg of you, instruct me in archery. I must forge my strength, for there are lives depending on my protection." But a shadow fell over Julian's face. With a heavy heart, he crushed the boy's hopes, confessing that he was no knight at all. Later, within the sanctuary of the inn, Carnelian pierced through his silence. Why reject the boy? Crushing a child's dream doesn't suit your bleeding heart. Julian's shoulders slumped under an invisible burden. His eyes held too much light. I could not tarnish them with a lie. The title of a knight is forged in blood and honor, not mimicked with hollow words. Besides, he forced a smile, the path of the culinary arts has its perks. A warm room and a soft bed in exchange for my skills in the kitchen tomorrow. It is a fair trade, is it not? Carnelian swiped a finger across a dusty surface, her expression twisting. A fair trade indeed, she scoffed, her sarcasm cutting through the gloomy atmosphere like a knife. Seeking to drown the tension, Carnelian proposed they indulge in some spirits. Julian hesitated, admitting he had never tasted alcohol. A pity, she sighed. Since you are still a babe in the woods, I shall drink alone. The provocation struck a nerve. Who are you calling a child? Julian snapped. You are the ancient monster who has roamed this earth for over 2,000 years. It is just liquor. Watch me conquer it. A victorious smirk played on Carnelian's lips. However, merely 2.5 minutes later, Julian's reality began to warp and twist. Carnelian chuckled darkly. Perhaps the world remains still, my dear master, and it is something else entirely that has lost its balance. Julian slammed his hand down, slurring his retort. Correct, the world stands firm. It is you who are spinning. And with that final proclamation, he collapsed face first onto the counter. And now, stillness returns, she mused. But just as Carnelian lamented his pathetic tolerance, A shadow loomed over her. A stranger approached, his intentions vile and lustful. Though she commanded him to vanish, the fool ignored the warning, extending a lecherous hand toward her. In an instant, the air grew cold. Carnelian's gaze sharpened, unleashing a wave of murderous intent so potent it nearly stopped the man's heart. Terror seized him, and he scrambled backward. Fine, I shall return when you tire of solitude. As the nuisance fled, the innkeeper watched Carnelian from the shadows, his gaze heavy with suspicion. The moment Carnelian's piercing eyes met his, the innkeeper panicked and averted his gaze, acting as if he had seen nothing. A frown marred Carnelian's beauty. Was the alcohol playing tricks on her senses? Her attention then shifted to the stage, where the establishment's crown jewel prepared to perform. The singing fairy, a being of ethereal grace. Though born male, his beauty transcended gender, eclipsing even the most stunning maidens of the realm. This was Melquent, the star whose voice could charm the stars. Yet, shackles of slavery and a tragic past steeped his melodies in profound sorrow. His song was so heart-wrenching that even beasts would weep. Yet, amidst his despair, a mysterious guardian had always shielded him, offering a fragile thread of hope in his darkest hours. The following morning, Julian awoke to a splitting headache. The owner wasted no time, barking orders for him to commence his duties in the kitchen. Determined to prove his worth, Julian began his culinary performance. Suddenly, Melquent graced the kitchen, seeking a simple glass of water, yet moving with the elegance of royalty. As Julian beheld the figure before him, a flush of color rose to his weathered cheeks. By the gods, this woman is breathtaking, he thought, completely captivated. But the moment was shattered as Raspel burst onto the scene, hunting for his idol. Spotting the cook, Raspel leveled an accusing finger. You charlatan, what vile schemes are you plotting against my beloved Melquent? Mercifully, Melquent intervened, his voice soft as he explained his presence. Raspel's hostility waned, but his grip on his wooden sword tightened. Listen well, if you dare bring harm to Melquent, I shall run you through with this blade. Turning to the fairy, the boy puffed out his chest. Fear not, I stake my honor as a knight on your safety. With a final gallant wave, he dashed off to hone his swordsmanship, but fate had a cruel twist in store. At the threshold, he collided with a towering figure. It was the same wretch who had harassed Carnelian the night prior. Watch your step, you insolent brat, he snarled. But his anger evaporated the moment he spotted the fairy. A vulgar whistle pierced the air. Well now, if it isn't the prize from last night. He stepped closer, his eyes undressing Melquent with predatory hunger. The disrespect was too much for Raspel to bear, rage boiling over. He raised his wooden training sword and struck the villain from behind. The blow lacked power, but the insult cut deeper than steel. With a roar of fury, the man backhanded Raspel, sending the boy crashing to the floor. Yet, with trembling legs, Raspel rose, placing his small body between the monster and the fairy. The confusion on the man's face shifted to malice. He drew his weapon, the steel singing a song of death. Do you know who stands before you? I am Jared the Fierce, the butcher of children. Today, I shall sever that hand of yours, ensuring you never wield a sword again. Suddenly, a voice thunderous with authority shook the room. Halt, you lying filth. Who gave a rat like you the courage to wear the name of Jared? I was there at Beersheba. I saw the true Jared unsheath his demonic blade. The impostor froze, then sneered. You a kitchen rat at the legendary battlefield. One look tells me you are nothing but a third-rate cook. Spare me your delusions of grandeur. The insult to his honor snapped the final thread of Julian's patience. You call me third-rate. His aura exploded, suffusing the room. I am Julian, the wandering knight who saved Beersheba from ruin. But the bandit only threw his head back and laughed. If a brat like you is truly a knight, I'll eat my own boots while doing a handstand. The thug sneers, his face twisting into a malicious grin. But if you speak the truth, then come, let me test the steel of this legendary wandering knight. But just as he prepares to strike, shadows descend from the heavens. Carnelian crashes down like a Valkyrie, her eyes burning with absolute disgust for the man before her. Carnelian raises her great sword, a monolith of judgment. You filth! How dare you disrespect my liege? With a single devastating swing, she crushes him into the dust. Her demeanor shifts instantly. A sweet smile graces her lips as she turns to Julian. Master, why do you persist in hiding your glorious identity? Julian stands frozen, the chaos swirling around him. It turns out these weren't mere innkeepers, but vile human traffickers who had bought these poor souls like cattle. As Raspel bows in tearful gratitude for their salvation, Julian opens his mouth to speak. He tries to confess that it was all a bluff, but crunch. Carnelian's boot stomps firmly on his foot. As Julian swallows his words in pain, Carnelian hides a sly smirk. There is no need for humility now. Let them believe in the legend. 2.5 hours later, they depart. The innkeeper, with his grotesque, pig-like face, watches them leave, sweating in fear. Julian sighs with relief, thinking Carnelian has learned mercy, but her voice drops to a chilling whisper. I truly intended to slaughter him yesterday. The only reason that wretch still draws breath is because he agreed to release the fairy, Melquent. But freedom comes with a heavy price. The fairy has nowhere to return to. His homeland is ash, his people scattered to the winds like lost leaves. Julian extends a hand of invitation. Carnelian nods in agreement, her logic sharp as ever. Knights are useless at chores. A fairy servant would be far more practical. But before they can depart, Melquent pauses. There is one final score to settle. 2.5 hours pass before Melquent returns, his expression resolved. The trio finally embarks on the long road to the royal city. Soon, Julian is gasping for air, his lungs burning, yet Melquent floats along effortlessly, boasting. Among male fairies, my stamina is legendary. Julian nods mindlessly, until the words actually register. He and Carnelian freeze, their eyes widening in unison. You are a male. Melquent sighs, his gaze distant as he reveals the tragic history of his mutilation. He was born a proud male fairy, but because the noble lady coveted his beauty, the jealous master had him castrated, forcing him to live as a female. Julian, innocent as the lamb, fails to grasp the concept. Carnelian offers a brutal analogy involving 2 eggs. Julian turns pale, checking his own safety as terror grips him. Finally, the towering walls of the Lysenbel royal city rise before them. A new chapter of their lives is about to begin. Back at the inn, Raspel is a weeping mess, unable to function without Melquent's guidance. The pig-faced owner rages over his lost property. Suddenly, the very foundations of the building groan, crack. 3 massive figures smash through the wall. A heavy boot crushes the owner into the floorboards. Hey pig, have you seen the red-eyed seal? Meanwhile, Lai stands before the emperor, but instead of a mission, he gives a command she must don a gown for the upcoming royal ball. It is an ultimatum. Find a partner tonight, and the emperor himself will decree the marriage using his supreme authority. Dressed in silk and lace, Lai feels like an imposter. The reflection in the mirror is not a knight, but a bride, triggering a tidal wave of agony. She and Jared were destined for the altar. She remembers sneaking into this very room, touching her wedding dress with trembling hands. She had counted the seconds until she could wear it for him. But on the eve of their union, the nightmare began. Jared slaughtered her entire bloodline and vanished into the shadows. The memory turns the beautiful dress into a shroud of despair. She leaves dejectedly, her heart heavy. By chance, she crosses paths with Carnelian. Seeing the fairy Melquent alongside Julian, Lai's curiosity is piqued. Julian quickly introduces Melquent, praising the fairy as a comrade just as loyal and vital as Carnelian. Carnelian tilts her head, asking Lai about her destination. Lai admits she has just purchased a gown for the royal ball. Carnelian sighs, a cloud of disappointment hanging over her. I cannot even dream of such finery, for I have yet to find a master worthy of serving him. Lai smiles, her spirit lifting slightly. Then let me treat you. Pick whatever your heart desires. It's on me. Carnelian's eyes sparkle like stars as she grasps Lai's hands in gratitude. But the joy is shattered instantly. A voice from the deepest hell whispers behind them. Will I finally see the blue raptor in a dress tonight? Lai spins around, her killing intent exploding. You, how dare you show your face here? Jared does not flinch. He calmly produces a golden invitation. Is this how Lysenbel treats its guests, drawing steel against a royal invitee? Lai freezes, the wax seal upon the parchment. It belongs to Crown Prince Bean himself. Why would the Crown Prince harbor a mass murderer before she can demand answers? Jared turns, his cape swirling with mocking grace. Regardless, I eagerly await your transformation tonight. He vanishes into the crowd, shaken but determined. Julian and his party enter the dress shop. It is Julian's first time in formal nobility attire. He squirms in discomfort, but Melquent's lavish compliments soothe his anxiety. Melquent transforms, donning a radiant gown, but Carnelian remains undecided. Julian urges her, "Hurry, or the night will begin without us." After an eternity of hesitation, Carnelian steps forward, her eyes locked on a specific garment. This one? This is the armor I choose for tonight. On the carriage ride to the grand ball, Julian couldn't keep his eyes off Carnelian, but when she caught him staring, he flinched in pure panic. Melquent gallantly offered to carry her heavy blade. Julian tried to step in to help, but Carnelian shut him down cold. "Don't even think about it. You wouldn't last a single minute holding this." Moments later, the carriage halted. The sheer magnificence of the castle interior left Julian breathless. Suddenly, two attendants rushed forward with sparkling eyes. "Are you the legendary Sir Julian? And this stunning lady must be your lover." Julian frantically waved his hands in denial. Carnelian stepped forward, her voice sharp. "I am Sir Knight Seal." The attendants immediately began fighting to recruit Julian for their respective princes. Suddenly, a cold voice cut through the noise. "What is in this commotion?" It was Knight Lai. After disciplining the servants, she led our trio into the ballroom. Carnelian noticed something off. "Why are you armor-clad instead of in a dress? The air here, it feels heavy." She wasn't wrong. Even the guests at the ball were armed with swords. Lai sighed, her expression grim. Lysenbel is tearing itself apart. The factions supporting the Crown Prince and the Second Prince are at each other's throats. Technically, the Crown Prince is the legal heir, but the Second Prince possesses the character and skill to actually rule this kingdom. That is why the court officials have rallied behind the younger brother. Carnelian scoffed. "So, it is like the classic tale, the incompetent elder versus the talented younger brother. What a cliché." Meanwhile, in the shadows of history, a woman who has slumbered for eons remains with her eyes closed. She's the mother of seals. The first emperor, Oben Barha, once swore a blood oath to bring Jurong before her, no matter the cost. Yet, confusion clouds her dormant mind. The one who awakened Jurong was not Tessing. As the mother of seals, you should know the truth. Why does it feel as if the world is spinning a web of lies? Back at the castle, the music finally began. Julian stood frozen, clueless about court etiquette. With Melquent providing the melody, Carnelian took charge to teach him right on the floor. She smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. Shall we under her lead? After 2.5 clumsy spins, Julian found his rhythm. Not bad for a first-timer. But the moment was shattered as a servant sprinted toward them, gasping for air. The king demanded their presence. Carnelian's eyes practically turned to gold coins. "Reward time, move it, my stern knight." Elsewhere, Jared wandered the halls until a blade flashed from the shadows. Knight Lai blocked his path. "You once tried to destroy Lysenbel," she hissed, "and now you sip wine at our ball. What is your game?" Jared smirked, unbothered. "I have no interest in this tiny kingdom. You know why I'm really here, Karina." Lai's eyes narrowed. "Do not use that name. I am Knight Lai of Lysenbel now, and why name your seal after the woman I used to be?" Her rejection ignited a fire in Jared's eyes. "How long will you play the loyal dog to these fools? They are leading this kingdom to ruin. There are chains holding you back from your true potential. Just watch. You will see how naive you truly are." In the great hall, the emperor showered Julian with praise, but Julian bowed his head humbly. "I simply did what had to be done." Carnelian nearly choked with rage. Thankfully, the king laughed it off and offered Julian a seat as a royal knight of Lysenbel. A mansion farmland, a life of luxury. Carnelian was vibrating with excitement, but Julian refused. Carnelian looked ready to strangle him. He just kicked a winning lottery ticket into the trash. The king opened his mouth to insist, but the crown prince suddenly rose from his seat, silencing the room. "Father, forgive me, but Lysenbel does not need more knights right now. We need stability. You must name your successor immediately." The ministers supporting the second prince stepped forward, echoing the demand. The king slammed his fist down, shaking the hall. "Silence, all of you. We are hosting heroes, and you dare play power games. Has your thirst for the throne stripped away your honor?" The king took a breath. He had planned to wait, but perhaps the victory celebration was the perfect stage. "I hereby name the second prince, Lance, as my heir." The words hit the crown prince like a physical blow. He fell to his knees, begging for a reversal, but the king's eyes were cold. I know about the assassinations. I know about your private army. If I let a monster like you take the throne, Lysenbel would burn to ash. Hope died in the crown prince's eyes, replaced by madness. He drew his blade and lunged at his own father. Lai sprinted forward, but the distance was too great. She could not reach them in time. Frustrated, she leveled her sword at the crown prince. Lie, he screamed, a royal knight turning her blade on royalty. Is this justice? Do not make me question where your loyalty truly lies. He raised his sword to the ceiling, voice cracking with insanity. As king, I command you seal the city, slaughter every traitor who opposes me. Instantly, the doors burst open. Countless soldiers flooded the hall, encircling our heroes in a ring of steel. Jared materializes from the shadows, taking his place beside the crown prince. With a sinister smile, the prince turns to Julian. Pledge your loyalty to me, he offers, and I will grant you wealth and glory beyond your wildest dreams. But Julian stands like a statue, his expression cold as ice. He firmly rejects the offer, refusing to bow to a monster who murdered his own father to seize power. Fury twists the crown prince's face. He levels his blade at Julian's throat, spitting insults at the ungrateful subject. Lie, he barks at his knight. Execute this traitor immediately. But Lie does the unthinkable. She casts her sword aside, the metal ringing against the marble floor, and renounces her knighthood right then and there. Her voice rings out with conviction. From this moment on, she serves no corrupt royal orders. She will protect the kingdom of Lysenbel on her own terms. The prince screams for his guards to slaughter Lie, but the hall remains frozen. No one dares to move. The soldiers tremble, not just from fear of Lie's legendary strength, but out of respect for her unwavering honor. Enraged by their defiance, the prince turns to Jared, commanding him to massacre everyone who dares to disobey. But Jared's eyes narrow dangerously. He warns the prince with a fierce glare. I only agreed to attend the ball. Do not mistake me for one of your dogs to order around. However, the chaos brings a grim satisfaction to Carnelian. With Lie abandoning her post, the most formidable obstacle is gone. The path to assassinating the Mad Prince is finally clear, but victory is short-lived. The wizard Melquin suddenly stiffens, sensing a terrifying, ominous darkness approaching. He throws open the balcony doors, and horror washes over them. The entire capital city is already drowning in a sea of flames. Lie wastes no time, roaring for her subordinate arties to evacuate the civilians, but before they can move, the main doors of the hall crash open with a deafening boom. Steps echo through the silence. It is Sadi, the hunter seeking Carnelian. Lie freezes, instantly recognizing the nightmare standing before her. Fear grips her heart. Why is the Black Cardinal here, a monster with power greater than kings, answering only to the first emperor himself? Fortunately, the predator's gaze passes over Carnelian. Sadi has not spotted his prey yet. Instead, he demands the presence of the king of Lysenbel. The foolish crown prince rushes forward, shouting, I am the king. But a terrified minister quickly points toward the second prince, Lance, revealing the true hierarchy. Sadi glances at the old king's corpse lying in a pool of blood and sneers. He understands exactly what kind of treachery occurred here. With a simple gesture, he orders his subordinate Juliet to strike. A torrent of flames consumes the crown prince, burning him alive in seconds. Sadi steps over the ash, locking eyes with Prince Lance. You reign now, Sadi declares coldly. Your first duty is to bring the one with the red eyes to me. This is the absolute will of First Emperor Oben Barra. Fail to produce them, and I will slaughter your people one by one until I find my target. The threat hangs heavy in the air, and Carnelian's blood runs cold. The hunter has found the scent. Lie steps between the monster and her people, her resolve made of steel. She cannot allow Sadi to butcher innocence on her watch. Sadi smiles, a twisted delight dancing in his eyes. He wonders aloud just how beautifully a female knight screams when she breaks. The clash is instant, but within 2 seconds, Lie is left reeling. Sadi didn't even draw his blade. He blocked her assault with a bare arm that pulses with dark magic. Every impact sends shockwaves of agony through Lie's bones. Sadi mocks her effortlessly, claiming she isn't even worth the steel of his sword. Then, his minions join the fray. Juliet and Justin unleash a hellstorm of ice and fire, forcing Lie into a desperate defensive struggle. Sadi seizes the opening. He lunges, his hand closing around Lie's throat to crush the life from her. Scream for me, Blue Raptor, he hisses, but a flash of crimson light tears through the air. Jared strikes like a viper, severing Sadie's magic arm in one clean blow. Jared stands before Lai, his aura radiating dominance. "If you want a piece of her, get in line," he warns. "I have been waiting for her far longer than you." Sadie's amusement vanishes. He draws his blade, the air growing heavy with killing intent. Jared's expression hardens. He knows the legends of that cursed weapon. It is said no warrior can block that sword more than 5 times. It is not just a weapon, but a conduit for devastating magical amplification. Sadie swings, and an invisible sonic boom ripples through the hall, bringing everyone to their knees in agony. Jared winces, the feedback vibrating through his skull. Sadie laughs triumphantly. "The harder you strike, the greater the backlash. Your own power will tear you apart. Your body will reject the magic until it destroys you." But Jared ignores the warning, charging forward with reckless abandon. Justin conjures a wall of glacial ice to stop him, but Karina leaps into the fray. With a single, earth-shattering punch, she obliterates the ice barrier. Juliet immediately counters, unleashing a wall of fire to hold the line. Jared closes the distance, his blade crashing against Sadie's defense. But the rumors were true. The magical shockwave rebounds instantly, slamming into Jared's body. He is forced to leap back, gasping as the recoil tears at his muscles. Meanwhile, the combined might of Juliet and Justin pins Karina down. Sadie turns his gaze back to Jared. "You have courage, boy. But are you brave enough to try again? Block my sword and suffer, or lower your guard and die without pain. Make your choice." Suddenly, a flash of blue light materializes at Jared's side, ready to stand with him against the darkness. Yet, in the eye of the storm, Jared turns to her with a roguish grin. "When we kill this monster," he asks, "will you come live in the South with me?" Even in the face of death, Lai's cheeks flush a sudden red. "Focus on the enemy first," she stammers. "We can discuss the future if we survive." While the titans clash, Carnelian seizes the chance, dragging Julian toward the exit. Julian resists, his eyes fixed on Lai's desperate battle. "We must help them," he cries, struggling against Carnelian's grip. Carnelian snaps, fury in her eyes. "Master, forget your heroics. Do not meddle in a battle of monsters. We are powerless here." "That demon is hunting me. Surviving is the only way we help. If the Emperor captures us now, it is all over." Her words leave Julian stunned, confusion clouding his gaze as he is dragged into the night. "You have slumbered for over 500 years. Why does the Emperor hunt you now?" A shadow falls over Carnelian's face. 5 centuries was not enough time, not nearly enough to escape his terrifying control. Elsewhere, Sade clutches the stump of his severed arm. He leaves Lisenbell behind, his obsession burning. He will hunt down the red-eyed seal, no matter the cost. His subordinate asks if he needs reinforcements, but Sade scoffs. "No," he sneers. "The hunt is far sweeter when the prey runs in terror." Word of the seal's escape reaches the imperial capital. Yet Reet, the head of security, does not rage. Instead, a twisted smile spreads across his lips. He has no intention of letting Sade claim the glory. His adopted son proposes a lethal trap. Ambush them at the Pike Mountains. To evade the Empire's grasp, the fugitives must flee to Dirkhart, the lawless lands, and the Pike Mountains are the only path through. Meanwhile, after 2 days of non-stop sprinting, Julian is broken. His stamina has hit rock bottom. Their destination, Dirkhart, lies ahead. But at this pathetic pace, it would take 2 years to arrive. 2 years, Julian gasps in despair. Carnelian turns to him with a sharp look. "Do you know why the journey takes so long?" "Because a school of fish must always swim at the speed of the slowest weakling." Julian blinks, the insult flying completely over his head. Carnelian explodes. "It means a 1-week trip takes 2 years because someone is deadly slow." "I get it," Julian yells back. He marches forward for exactly 2 meters and stops, since it will take 2 years anyway. "Can we take a nap first?" He collapses. "Carnelian, please, I cannot take another step." Thanks to Melquin's persuasion, Carnelian reluctantly agrees to rest. She ignores Julian, fuming silently. Suddenly, the bushes rustle nearby. A wild boar bursts from the undergrowth, terrified. Julian instinctively clings to Carnelian for safety. Realizing his mistake, he pulls away, his face burning with shame. But then, the ground begins to tremble. Julian looks up in horror. Two massive orcs loom over them like mountains. Carnelian steps forward, shielding her companions. "What is your business?" she demands. The orcs sneer, looking for the boar, and rudely demand answers. Filthy humans are disgusting. They spit with contempt. A vein pops on Carnelian's forehead. That was the wrong thing to say. Bang. Her left leg snaps out, sending the orc crashing to the earth. "Hate humans all you want, but keep me out of it." "I am a seal, you blind fool. Can your tiny brain not tell the difference between a deity and a human?" The orcs tremble before her fury. Suddenly, a man rushes into the clearing. "Stop, do not hurt my friends," he screams at Carnelian. He prepares to fight, but then he sees her face. Swoosh. He slides perfectly onto his knees before Carnelian, struck by her beauty. "I am Seiyo," he declares with sparkling eyes. "May I know your name, goddess?" Julian is dumbfounded. Did he really just switch sides? Seiyo boldly grabs her hand. Startled by the audacity, Carnelian recoils as if burned. She quickly retreats behind Julian's back. The fearless warrior suddenly looks like a shy maiden. It seems Lady Carnelian is helpless against aggressive flirting. But when Seiyo realizes Julian is her master, his adoration turns to jealous rage. "You scoundrel! How dare a shameless fellow like you treat this goddess as a slave?" The word slave ignites Carnelian's temper again, but to Seiyo's love-struck eyes, even her fury is enchanting. Pow! An uppercut sends Seiyo flying. The orcs flee in the confusion. Julian chuckles awkwardly. Technically, Seiyo did save his friends. Should they stop her? Probably, but who dares to try? Later, at the village, they find a girl who has slept for 20 years. The villagers gave up hope long ago, but one man, Leto, refused to let go of the belief she would wake. Tensions rise as the villagers try to force Leto to sell the sleeping girl. Suddenly, Seiyo bursts in. "Whoever dares touch a hair on Amaryllis, will end up looking like me." Leto stares at his son's bruised face. "Son, what happened to you?" Carnelian smiles innocently in the background. "Just a love tap from a beautiful lady." Seiyo sighs dreamily. He turns to introduce his guests. "I met them on the road. Ignore the plain guy, but the lady and the fairy are exquisite." Leto seizes the chance. Using the guests as an excuse, he shoos the greedy villagers away. Tea is served. Carnelian takes a sip and pauses. Zuluha leaves. From the lost paradise that vanished over a century ago. Leto's eyes widen. "Are you a seal?" Carnelian grins. "Finally, someone with eyes. Much sharper than your foolish son." Seiyo scratches his head. A seal isn't that just a fancy slave? The air in the room drops to freezing point. Leto smacks his son. "Listen well. A seal is a fated guardian who lives to awaken their trainer under destiny's guidance." Seiyo's eyes light up with a new delusion. He drops to his knees instantly. "It is destiny. Allow me to awaken you, my lady." Bang. Carnelian's boot meets his face. "I am already awake, you idiot." With the fool dealt with, Carnelian turns serious. Why did those villagers want to sell the girl? Leto sighs heavily. "It is the orcs. They hunt our livestock and boars, pushing the village into desperate conflict." Melquint nodded in solemn agreement, realizing a harsh truth. To an orc. The concept of land ownership was alien. They could never grasp that the wild boar ridge belonged to humans. Desperate to survive, the villagers had summoned mercenaries to subjugate the beastmen. But these hired swords were no saviors. They squeezed the village dry, demanding payment they did not earn. Cornered and penniless, the villagers conceived a dark plan to sell the sleeping seal, Amaryllis. Hearing this, Carnelian's eyes narrowed. She demanded to see this dormant vessel immediately. Guided by Seiyo, the group made their way to Amaryllis's chamber, the air heavy with anticipation. However, after 2.5 minutes of intense scrutiny, Carnelian broke the silence. This seal is an anomaly. Even in slumber, a seal should radiate power. Yet from this child, she sensed absolutely nothing. Beside them, Seiyo's eyes burned with obsession. "I will waken her," he declared. "No matter the cost, I will rouse this pure and delicate spirit." But Julian's voice cut through the excitement, cold and warning. "Do not presume her nature before she opens her eyes." When Carnelian slept, I too believed she was a fragile flower. Before he could finish his mockery, Carnelian loomed over him, a dark aura flaring. What did you just dare to say? Her killing intent instantly silenced Julian. Turning her sharp gaze to Sio, she scoffed. You think a mere mortal can awaken a seal just by wishing it? But Sio pointed an accusing finger at Julian. That weakling awakened you. Why can't I? How dare you look down on my potential master? He may look unimpressive, but he awakened me the supreme seal. Carnelian defended him, though her words stung. Julian, feeling the backhanded compliment, swallowed his indignation. Not daring to meet Carnelian's gaze, he turned away and muttered, Cooks have dignity too. Suddenly, an ethereal voice pierced the room. Please, tell me your name. Julian blinked in confusion. Why, say it again? Have you forgotten? It is Carnelian. But Melquint's eyes went wide with shock. It wasn't Lady Carnelian who spoke. All eyes turned to the bed, where the sleeping girl was staring fixatedly at Julian. Please, she whispered, say my name. Thunderstruck, the group froze on what was happening. He was just a cook, not a radiant knight, yet the sleeping seal called out only to him. Panic seized Sio. He threw himself between them, shouting, Your name is Amaryllis. I am the one who has waited for you. But the girl looked through him as if he were air. Her eyes locked solely on Julian, pleading for her name. Sio's face twisted in humiliation and rage. Did you plan this? Sio snarled at Julian. Did you get close to me just to steal Amaryllis away? Sensing the murderous vibe, Julian glanced at Carnelian. Time to run, and without hesitation, Julian bolted from the bedroom, with Carnelian hot on his heels. Melquint offered a polite, hasty bow to the stunned village chief and vanished after them, leaving only the girl behind, endlessly chanting Julian's name like a prayer. As they fled, Carnelian tried to reassure him. We are already hunted by the first Emperor Odin Bara. What is one more stolen seal on our list of crimes? But Julian was not comforted by their criminal status. Suddenly, Melquint sniffed the air. I smell spirits. Julian's demeanor instantly transformed. There is no problem alcohol cannot fix, and if there is, simply drink more. With renewed vigor, he sprinted toward the local tavern. Watching him run for the bottle, Carnelian revealed a hidden truth to Melquint. The world misunderstands the laws of magic. They think mere humans awaken us. The absolute truth is, this only those with the power to dominate a seal can manifest one. This only deepened Melquint's confusion. Then, what of Master Julian? Carnelian's gaze turned thoughtful. Power comes in many forms. The seemingly weak master? He must possess a strength that even I have yet to fathom. But destiny was cruel. Arriving at the tavern, the server delivered tragic news: no alcohol. Every last drop had been bought by the mercenaries stationed there. Just then, Carnelian and Melquint stepped through the door. The tavern erupted into lewd cheers. The mercenaries' eyes gleamed with predatory intent. Who knew this hellhole hid such exquisite beauties? A fairy and a lady in one night. They jeered at Carnelian, demanding she pour their drinks. Turning to Julian, their voices dropped to a lethal growl. Leave the girls and crawl out, boy, or we bury you here. But Julian did not retreat. In a flash of movement, he stepped up to the mercenary leader and snatched the blade from his waist. His voice dropped, cold as the grave. If you are confident in your life, then try to kill me. A terrifying, unseen pressure exploded from Julian. The mercenary leader, overwhelmed by the sudden killing intent, collapsed to the floor, scrambling backward in pure terror. Are you a knight? Steel danced between Julian's fingers. He smiled, a reaper's grin. You asked too many questions for a dead man. That was the breaking point. After 1 second of paralyzing fear, the leader scrambled for the door, shouting over his shoulder, Remember this, you punk. We're only leaving because you aren't worth the trouble. As the door slammed shut, Julian collapsed into a chair, his legs turning to jelly. I thought I was going to die. Carnelian stood frozen, processing the scene. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. Why the sudden bluff? You have never acted this reckless before. Julian looked up, a weary smile on his face. I just wanted to teach them a lesson. No one treats you casually while I am around. You used to protect me today. I protect you. The words struck Carnelian like a lightning bolt. A crimson blush stained her cheeks, and she turned away to hide her face. What kind of master protects their own seal? You really are a strange person. The tension broke as the tavern server rushed over, eyes shining with gratitude. You saved us from those parasites, and in thanks, the staff brought out their finest hidden reserves of food and wine, a feast fit for heroes. For the rest of the night, Carnelian's gaze upon him was unusually gentle. The peaceful meal concluded, and Julian packed their gear, ready to march toward Derricart. But suddenly, Carnelian appeared, wearing the very garments she wore the day she was found. She stared deep into his eyes. "Stop joking!" Julian laughed nervously. But Carnelian seized his hand, her grip trembling with urgency. "Say my name," she demanded. "Say it now." The scream echoes in his mind like a banshee's wail. Julian jolts awake, cold sweat drenching his back. He tries to convince himself it was just a nightmare, but reality is far crueler. A cold hand grips his own tight, and a voice whispers the words he fears most. "Please, bestow a name upon me." But Julian refuses, paralyzed by fear. He recoils from the bond. Without a name, the spirit remains trapped in the void between worlds, a hollow vessel unable to even think. Witnessing his master's pathetic state, the crimson beauty Carnelian decides to have a little fun. "Shall I announce your presence to her, master?" she teases. Julian freezes, completely cornered by his own guilt. His reality is fracturing. On one side, a spirit begging for identity. On the other, a murderous intent warning him to stay away from Amaryllis. Carnelian sighs, her expression softening. To leave a seal unnamed is a cruelty beyond measure. An awakened spirit without a master is prey for the wicked. Finally, the truth spills from Julian's trembling lips. "Look at me. My mana is pathetic. I refuse to curse another soul with a master as weak as I am." Silence falls. Carnelian pulls him into a gentle embrace, her voice soothing his turmoil. "Listen well, master. Infinite power does not guarantee a seal's happiness. Though, I admit, being stuck with a weakling usually leads to a tragic ending." She adds with a wry smile. Before she can finish her teasing, Julian shoves her away. "That settles it. I must escape immediately." He scrambles to find a new sanctuary. But Carnelian smiles, her eyes soft. "You should know, master, I have never regretted choosing you." While they bicker, disaster strikes elsewhere. Amaryllis wanders the forest alone, straight into the path of a ruthless mercenary band. Their eyes gleam with greed. A beauty like her would fetch a high price on the black market. She glances at the newcomers, not Julian, not her master, uninterested. She simply turns to walk away. Her hollow reaction confirms it to the wolves. She is broken, defenseless, grinning maliciously. They move in to take what they want. Back at the hideout, Julian freezes. Sio bursts onto the scene, demanding to know where Julian has hidden Amaryllis. Julian stammers, retreating fast. "I haven't seen her. I've been hiding from her all day. I swear." Sio's face twists in anguish. She has been missing for 24 hours, and his patience is snapping. Carnelian steps in, her voice cold. "Give it up, boy. Once a seal chooses a master, she becomes deaf to all others. She will never hear your voice again." Sio clenches his fists, eyes burning with defiance. "Do you think I care about your magical laws? I don't know what a seal is, and I don't care. All I know is this. I will bleed for the one I love. I will protect her, even if it costs me my life." He spins around, dashing into the wilderness. Carnelian sighs, shaking her head at his stubbornness. "Great, another fool in love. He is almost as depressing as you, master." But suddenly, Julian speaks up. "We are going after him." And then, Carnelian asks, "I will return her to Sio," Julian declares, "and then I will disappear for good." Melquint materializes from the shadows. So, the game of hide and seek is over then. Deep in the forest, Sio tracks the signs. Footprints in the mud lead him to a nightmare, the mercenaries closing in on Amaryllis. Rage explodes in his veins. Sio launches a desperate ambush on the nearest thug. "Get your filthy hands off her," he roars. The bandit leader, a bald brute, sneers. "Teach this kid a lesson in pain." A thug steps forward, spitting curses, thinking this will be easy. Flash of steel, Sio's blade cleaves the man's skull in a single strike. Too much talk, not enough skill. Sio hisses. The leader's face turns purple with fury. "Kill him!" the leader roars. Everyone at once, tear him apart. But Seo is not the weakling they expected. 2 years of hellish training pay off as he dances through their attacks, leaving the leader beaten and begging in the dirt. Mercy, no. Seo's eyes burn with judgment. You touched her. For that, there is no forgiveness. Victory seems certain until squelch. Cold steel pierces his chest from behind. The bald leader rises, a sinister grin returning to his face. You act like a hero, but you're just a corpse who doesn't know his limits. The blade plunges in again and again. The leader kicks his fallen men. Stop playing dead. Look at this mess. Seo is broken, bleeding out. Yet, he drags his body through the dirt toward her. Pathetic. The bandit laughs, trying to look cool in front of a girl while you die. He grabs Seo by the hair and tosses him like trash, landing right at Amaryllis' feet. Now watch closely. Boy, watch what we do to your beloved. But then, the air shifts. Amaryllis slowly turns her gaze to the dying boy. For years, Seo dreamed of this moment. He imagined her voice, her words, their reunion. But now, his senses are fading. Silence swallows him. Just as hope dies. Reinforcements arrive. Melquint spots the carnage. Julian's voice thunders. What is the meaning of this? The bandits freeze. They know that face. Boss, that's the monster from yesterday. They move to strike Julian fatal mistake. A crimson flash. Carnelian's greatsword sings, and heads roll before they even hit the ground. I truly detested the idea of saving Seo, Carnelian hissed. But you filth! You absolutely deserve to rot in hell. Her combat power was suffocating. The terrified mercenaries didn't hesitate. They turned tail and ran for their lives. Carnelian prepared to hunt them down, but Julian stopped her. He begged her to save Seo with magic, but the wounds were too deep. His chest was a mess of fatal stabs. And Carnelian. Her powers were forged for slaughter and destruction alone. She possessed no talent for salvation. Julian fell into despair, but suddenly a pair of pure, porcelain hands descended upon Seo's chest. It was Amaryllis. Her magic was a miracle of life. A simple touch could snatch a soul back from the very gates of death. Seo's eyes fluttered open. He was bewildered. He had been ready to accept his end with no regrets. How was he still breathing? He looked up to see Amaryllis smiling down at him and asked if she was his savior, but the girl remained silent. Instead, she spoke words that sent a shockwave through Carnelian. Please, tell me your name. Carnelian couldn't believe her eyes. The seal's contract had shifted its master oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Seo happily introduced himself. Amaryllis gazed at him with expectation. Now, please, speak my name. Seo gently clasped her small hand and whispered, You are Amaryllis. The pact was sealed. Lord Seo, you are now my tamer. I shall serve you with my life. Emotion surged within Seo. He pulled Amaryllis into a warm embrace. Just seeing your smile, it makes my entire existence worthwhile. Carnelian gagged in the background. Ugh, that was way too cheesy. Still, she had to admit Amaryllis' power to reverse death was incredible. Julian looked at Carnelian, curiosity piqued. Is she stronger than you? One burns the world to ash, the other breathes life into dust. Who can say? But it seemed Amaryllis had only just experienced her first awakening. I envy her, Carnelian mused. She has no past to haunt her. She can simply be happy. Knowledge is a curse. Julian scratched his head, confused. What's that supposed to mean? I know I'm just a chef, but I'm perfectly happy traveling with you. And meanwhile, miles away, the bald mercenary who escaped let out a twisted, greedy laugh. The adrenaline faded, and realization struck him. His subordinate trembled, claiming he had never seen a monster like that woman before. You absolute fool. That is the red-eyed seal, the most hunted entity in all of Hesperia. Just reporting her location will make us rich. We get our money, and we get our revenge. Those brats are finished. Back at the camp, Julian was oblivious to the danger. He stared at a strange ingredient, utterly stumped on how to cook it. Seo immediately mocked his skills. Flustered, Julian defended himself. I'm from a fishing village. I only know how to cook fish. Okay. Watching them bicker, a rare smile graced Carnelian's lips. She hadn't felt this relaxed in ages, but her expression darkened in a split second. The danger hadn't passed. This was no time to let their guard down. Out of the blue, Amaryllis turned to her. Carnelian, why were we created? What is the purpose of a seal? It seemed Amaryllis had lost her memories of her origin. Carnelian looked away. I cannot say. And honestly, it is better that you have forgotten them. Do not burden yourself with the past. Just live for today and find your own happiness. Even though your idiot master will eventually die, you must carry his memory and live on. Hearing the word die, Amaryllis let out a distressed cry. Carnelian panicked, trying to comfort her. I didn't mean right now. Just then, Sio walked over to check on them. Teary-eyed, Amaryllis pointed a finger. Lady Carnelian said you're going to die someday. Before she could finish, Sio gently pressed a finger to her lips. That will never happen, Amaryllis. I could never leave you behind. The sheer sweetness of the moment made Carnelian shudder with secondhand embarrassment. The atmosphere shifted when the village chief returned, looking defeated. The village council had just concluded their emergency meeting. The villagers were clamoring for war. They believed that if the orcs were attacking wild boars, it was only a matter of time before they slaughtered the village. But Sio shook his head. He firmly believed the orcs were a proud and honorable warrior race. They only fight to protect their land, Sio insisted. If we don't provoke them, they will not attack us. The chief agreed, but fear is a powerful motivator. The terrified villagers wouldn't listen to reason. They only wanted to crush the threat to feel safe. Those ruled by fear draw their blades. Only the brave dare to extend a hand. One day, you will truly understand this. Sio refused to give in to the cycle of violence. He would be the one to extend that hand. He resolved to visit the orc village himself. The chief protested, citing Sio's fresh wounds, but Sio smiled confidently. With Amaryllis by my side, I am invincible. Seeing his determination, the chief sighed in relief. He promised to stall the villagers and try to talk sense into them. The next morning, Sio dragged everyone along. Carnelian was annoyed, but whispered a grim warning to Julian. We cannot afford to wander freely. We are hunted. Julian frowned, his voice laced with worry as he thought about the threat. Those mercenaries will return for blood, he argued. We help them once, and then we vanish. Reluctantly, Carnelian agreed to the plan. At long last, the group arrived at the rugged outskirts of the orc village. Gazing at the battle-hardened warriors, Julian realized these were nothing like the broken, spiritless orcs he had seen back in the city. Melquin whispered a dark truth beside him. Those born in chains eventually lose the will to break them. Inside the main tent, they stood before the orc chieftain, Noisio. She was stunned. Humans usually treated seals as mere tools, yet here was a man asking for a sacred blessing. For a seal he loved like family. The request hit the room like a thunderclap, leaving Carnelian and the others completely frozen. Amaryllis was merely a child. The chieftain frowned, warning that beasts and humans could never truly be lovers. It went against the laws of nature and lineage, but Seo, he didn't give a damn about tradition. With the blessing secured, the topic shifted to Nate. But Seo waved it off. He didn't want a hostage returned. He had come simply to apologize for the villagers' rudeness. The chieftain's eyes widened in disbelief. She turned to Carnelian, her voice heavy with history. I have walked this earth for centuries, far longer than this seal, and never once has a human lowered their head to me in apology. Hearing this, Seo stepped forward. He didn't draw a weapon. He offered an empty hand. I hope we can coexist in peace, just like the old days. My father taught me those ruled by fear draw their blades, but the truly brave, they extend their hands. Julian leaned in, panic in his voice. I don't think he meant that literally, but the chieftain cut in, eyeing Julian sharply. And you, are you this seal's tamer? It makes no sense. You possess no great strength. How did a weakling forge a contract with such a powerful entity? Julian swallowed hard. He admitted he didn't know the how or why either. He knew one painful truth right now. He was useless to Carnelian. The chieftain stared him down, relentless. Do you regret it, binding your fate to hers? Julian couldn't give a simple yes or no. Instead, he made a vow. Ask me again in 2.5 years. By then, I will answer with 0 regrets. And for that future, I will give everything I have. Carnelian looked at him, stunned. Was this the same timid Julian seeing the humans fight for their bonds? The chieftain felt the ice around her heart melt. Though she couldn't fully grasp their logic regarding the captive, Nate. She was willing to trust their spirit. Seo grabbed her hand, shaking it wildly, praising her as the bravest warrior of them all. But the celebration was shattered. A guard burst in, face pale with terror. The human army had seized the village and taken everyone hostage. Seo's blood ran cold. Mercenaries, had they returned for revenge? No. This was worse. It was Reet, head of Imperial Security. She wasn't about to let Sid claim all the glory. The moment she heard rumors of the red-eyed seal, she mobilized her elite troops to crush the village. They had to move. Seo bid a hasty farewell to the chieftain. Carnelian and Julian prepared to break out. Watching the group depart, the chieftain made her choice. Today, she would be the brave one. She would extend her hand to the humans. Meanwhile, the Imperial commander interrogated the village head. "Where is the red-eyed seal?" The old orc remained silent, claiming ignorance. The bald vice captain sneered. "Don't play dumb. We know you've seen the beast with your own eyes." Still, the elder refused to speak. The commander grabbed him by the throat, eager to expose the lie. "Talk, or I slaughter your people one by one." The bald soldier laughed, pressing his blade against a trembling villager's neck. To save his kin, the village head crumbled. He had no choice but to reveal Carnelian's location. Smirking, the commander ordered the bald soldier to release the hostage and force the elder to lead the way. As for the rest, kill them all. The bald soldier raised his sword to execute the elder. When snap, his blade shattered into dust. In a flash, his body was sliced clean in half. Carnelian stood over the corpse, sighing dramatically. "My cursed popularity. Oh, everywhere I go, men just can't stop chasing me." The commander stared, shocked that the target had delivered herself right to him, alone. But Carnelian's eyes glinted dangerously. "Did you think I came alone?" The ground began to tremble. The thunder of hooves echoed from the horizon. Orc warriors flooded the battlefield. With the tribe uniting with the humans, the Imperial formation crumbled in seconds. Seo and the others rushed in, freeing the hostages. Seeing the tide turn, the commander tried to flee, but Carnelian was already there, smiling. Leaving so soon, she raised her hand to deliver the death blow. Suddenly, a black shadow erupted from nowhere, blasting her back. Carnelian skidded to a halt, eyes wide with shock. What in the world is that blob? It looked like a clumsy, armored Hulk. She expected it to be slow. She was wrong. It vanished and reappeared instantly at her flank. She barely raised her sword in time. The impact sent her sliding back 2 meters, her arms numb. The speed was impossible. The commander laughed maniacally. "Behold the magic heavy infantry soldiers who have broken their physical limits through dark sorcery. They burn their own life force for power. They are walking corpses, but until they die, they are unstoppable." The power was lethal enough to slaughter knights and seals alike. Suddenly, a wall of steel closed in as heavy infantry surrounded Carnelian. Her heart sank in an instant. The armored tide wasn't just targeting her, they were marching straight for Julian. Orc warriors charged bravely, but they were cut down in a single, brutal stroke. The enemy advanced on Julian without pausing, while Carnelian was trapped in a desperate melee. She was too far away to save him, distracted by terror. Her guard slipped, and a heavy blow slammed directly into her defenseless side. The iron circle tightened, threatening to crush her. Pushed to the brink, Carnelian screamed and unleashed every ounce of her dormant power. A blinding surge of lightning exploded outward, yet, shockingly, the armored giants were pushed back a mere 2 steps. Carnelian fell to her knees, her energy completely drained. Witnessing the enemy stand unscathed, despair clawed at her throat. She had to change tactics immediately. She would strike the mages controlling these puppets, but time was a luxury she did not have. Julian was staring death in the face. Abandoning all defense, she sprinted toward her master. She cut down one soldier with frantic strength, but another wall of steel instantly blocked her path. Fresh troops swarmed her, their weapons carving deep wounds into her flesh. Her mind screamed in agony, "Damn it, am I destined to fail my master again?" Blades were raised, poised to end both Julian and Carnelian. But suddenly, the heavens themselves darkened in a terrifying display. A catastrophic bolt of lightning tore through the sky. It struck a soldier holding a lightning rod, instantly incinerating him. Thunder roared as bolts rained down, toppling the heavy infantry like dominoes. Carnelian whipped her head around, eyes wide, searching for the source of such overwhelming magic. Through the smoke, she spotted a figure in the distance, crackling with raw, unbridled electricity. Jaws dropped in collective disbelief as the smoke cleared. The master of this storm was none other than the humble village chief, Leo. The old man had been hiding the power of an archmage all along, but before they could even sigh in relief, the air grew heavy again. Melquent sensed a truly malevolent aura. A massive fireball plummeted from the heavens. Aimed to kill Carnelian moved on instinct, throwing herself up to block the devastation. As the flames dissipated, 3 terrifying silhouettes emerged from the inferno. It was Syed, the hunter who had been relentlessly pursuing Carnelian. The enemy commander stepped forward, grinning with arrogance. "My lord, aside from the mage and the red-eyed seal, the rest are merely trash." He turned to Syed, expecting praise for his report. Instead, Justin simply raised a hand, and the commander was instantly frozen into a statue of solid ice. "I will be sure to mention your efforts to the Emperor." With a cold snap of his fingers, Justin shattered the frozen commander into 1,000 glittering pieces. The surrounding mages shrieked in absolute terror, scrambling to flee, but they didn't even make it 2 meters before the frost claimed them all, freezing them mid-scream. Juliet stepped forward next, unleashing a wave of hellfire that instantly reduced the frozen statues to piles of ash. Such monstrous power weighed heavily on Carnelian's soul. Syed sneered. "I have finally caught you, red-eyed seal." But Julian ignored the threat, his eyes burning as he demanded, "What have you done with Lile?" Seed laughed darkly. "Oh, she wasn't much of a fighter, but her screams, they were exquisite music to my ears." Carnelian instantly shielded Julian, her glare icy. "You talk big, but you look ragged. It seems your journey here wasn't as easy as you pretend." The mockery hit home. Syed's face twisted in rage. "Kill them!" he barked at his 2 subordinates. "Slaughter every single pest that stands in my way." Death approached in a heartbeat, but the village chief was ready. He cast his strongest barrier, but it wasn't enough. He could only shield Carnelian and Sio's group, watching helplessly as the orcs and villagers were obliterated outside the dome. The slaughter broke something inside Sio. Unable to watch, he roared in fury and charged out of the safety barrier, aiming his blade straight at Syed's throat. It was a fatal mistake. Syed didn't even flinch. With a simple, lazy draw of his sword, he cut Sio down instantly. He raised his blade to deliver the final execution. Suddenly, Amaryllis threw herself in the path of the blade. The sword pierced her chest. Julian and Carnelian froze, their eyes widening in absolute horror. Sio's arrogance had cost the ultimate price. He crumbled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably, begging Amaryllis to open her eyes. But she lay still, cold and silent. The sound of Sio's hysterical weeping only seemed to excite Seed further. "Is this it? Is this all the pathetic resistance you can muster?" But unnoticed by everyone, a change was taking hold of Julian. A cold, quiet rage began to boil within him, forging a deep, spiritual link with Carnelian. Carnelian gasped as fresh power flooded her veins. For the first time, she could feel her master's raw emotions, his fury, his sorrow, his will coursing through her. Empowered by this bond, Carnelian launched herself at the enemy. Just as Syed prepared to sever Sio's head, she arrived. Steel clashed against steel as she knocked Syed back. She pressed the attack relentlessly, but Seed parried her strikes with ease, sneering, "So eager to die, little seal." Carnelian's eyes blazed with killing intent. "Today, I will shatter that cursed sword of yours, and then I will carve you into pieces." It wasn't an empty threat. With every thunderous blow she landed, spiderweb cracks began to appear on Syed's blade. Sensing blood, Carnelian lunged for a frontal strike Syed had countered with a lethal thrust, but she danced around it with newfound speed. "You're not as invincible as you think," she taunted. Sid gritted his teeth, confused. By all logic, she should be exhausted. Yet she was fighting with the ferocity of a demon. Where was this strength coming from? His eyes darted past her and landed on Julian. The tamer stood in the distance, enveloped in a strange, otherworldly aura that pulsed in rhythm with Carnelian. Realization struck Syed like lightning. "It's him. He's the battery." He pointed his sword at the boy and roared to his minions, "Kill that tamer immediately." Without hesitation, the twin subordinates unleashed a catastrophic barrage of ice and fire, aimed directly at Julian's heart. Panic flashed in Carnelian's eyes. A lethal spell barreled toward Julian, and she was powerless to stop it. At the last second, the village chief intervened. He blocked the death blow. But the shockwave severed the fragile spiritual link between Julian and Carnelian. Seizing the opening, Sed lunged at Carnelian. His voice dripped with mockery. "Distracted by your pathetic tamer. "Where is your fire now?" Carnelian roared and counterattacked, but as their powers clashed, the truth was undeniable. Without the link, her strength was fading fast. Yet said new time was his enemy. A prolonged battle could turn the tides against him. He unleashed his full aura, crushing Carnelian under sheer pressure. Seeing her buckle, a twisted thrill surged through him. "That look of despair suits you," he sneered, but Carnelian smirked. The enemy seals, Juliet and Justin, had run out of mana. Ced's expression turned grim. "Do you know why seals are the ultimate weapons? Absolute obedience. They cannot refuse a command." His words sent a chill of confusion through Carnelian. Then, a maniacal laugh erupted from his throat. "Even if the cost is their very lives." Carnelian gasped in horror. "You wouldn't," but across the field, Juliet exploded with power, pinning the village chief in an instant. Justin materialized from the shadows. He seized the chief, his frost magic sealing the old man's hands in blocks of ice. The chief's eyes widened. This wasn't a capture attempt. The boy was preparing a suicide attack. Nearby, Juliet finished charging a devastating spell, but for a split second, he hesitated. He fought the command for 2 agonizing seconds before firing. The delay caused the blast to go wide. The explosion hurled the chief and Justin through the air. That moment of hesitation planted a terrifying suspicion in the chief's mind. Zed prepared to scream another order, but suddenly, he felt it. The mental leash on his seals was snapping. He was about to lose control completely. Desperate, he roared a final command. "Kill him now, burn your life force if you have to." The children trembled, but the curse forced them to obey. They raised their hands, unleashing the forbidden art, the dual heavens of ice and fire. The situation was hopeless. One of the chief's arms hung uselessly by his side. Destruction rushed toward him like a tidal wave, yet the old master stood perfectly calm. Suddenly, a mystical light bathed the battlefield. Ethereal butterflies materialized as he raised his one good arm. The swarm intercepted the blast, dissolving the magic into nothingness drained of all energy. The 2 children collapsed. Zed froze. His aces were defeated. He knew the battle was lost, but the chief's voice cut through the silence. "Those children, are they human?" The girl hesitated to strike. "A true seal under a knight's command would never show mercy." Zed laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Failed creations? Indeed. I've dissected enough of them to know the truth. If seals are like humans, then humans can be forged into seals. Do you see my genius? You monster, you stitch children into weapons." Outnumbered by Carnelian and the chief, Zed clicked his tongue and vanished. With the threat gone, the chief's adrenaline faded. He collapsed. His body pushed beyond its limits. Blood stained his robes, yet he waved Carnelian away. "Forget me, save the villagers first." Later, silence returned to the mountain. Julian sat alone on the peak, the brutal images of war replaying in his mind. He clenched his fists, swearing to gain power. Suddenly, Carnelian appeared. "How did you trigger the resonance?" Julian shook his head, confused. Seeing his dispirited face, Carnelian softened her tone. "It may have been a fluke," she said gently, "but your desire to protect gave me strength. That connection saved us. Tamers and seals share a soul. If you master the resonance, we will become truly one. I will be your eyes to see the truth, your sword to strike evil, and the heart that beats within you." She flipped her hair, turning away to hide the sorrow in her eyes. She believed such a destiny was impossible. Later, Carnelian visited the chief. "What will become of the weaponized children?" she asked. The chief smiled warmly. "I will adopt them." Carnelian gasped. "Are you mad? They are living calamities." "Everyone stumbles in the darkness," the chief whispered. "I was lucky. I had a mentor who showed me the light when I was lost. Now, I must be that light for them." He sighed heavily. "I broke my vow to my late wife never to use magic again, but I had no choice. That vow is why Seiyo was raised knowing nothing of the arcane arts." Carnelian let out a heavy sigh of disappointment. She had banked on recruiting the village chief, for without his strength, their team of 3 was hopelessly outmatched for the battles ahead. Suddenly, the chief's voice cut through the gloom. He had a burning question. Was the Emperor himself hunting her down? Carnelian smirked, pointing a finger toward the heavens. "If you think I fear the Emperor of Hespace, you are sorely mistaken. The one hunting me sits on a throne far above that. My pursuer is none other than the first Emperor, Oben Baham." As the trio turned to leave, the chief urgently called them back. The Olympic Mountains were a death trap filled with ambushes. He urged them to head for Black West Mountain and seek his mentor, Theseus. His faith in his master was absolute. He was certain Theseus would find a solution to their plight. With a solemn expression, he handed a weathered necklace to Carnelian. This artifact was the key to finding the sage, and Sio would be their guide. Julian watched in shock as the usually quiet boy brimmed with sudden, fiery energy. "Are you truly leaving the village?" Julian asked. Sio confirmed it with a nod. He would see the vast world and return to tell Amaryllis every epic tale he lived. While Julian beamed with joy, Carnelian let out another weary sigh. Great, just what she needed, another burden to drag along. After bidding farewell to the chief, the party of four stepped into the unknown. Their true odyssey had finally begun. They soon arrived at the ominous Black West Mountain, but the path forward was swallowed by the wilderness. They were completely lost. Tension spiked as Melquin froze. He sensed nothing, no beasts, no birds. The forest was gripped by a suffocating, deathly silence. Suddenly, Carnelian's instinct screamed. A terrifying power was closing in fast. The team instantly braced for combat. But instead of a monster, a girl came crashing out of the brush. Collapsing right into Julian's arms, Sio watched, consumed by a sudden flash of jealousy. He shot a glare at Carnelian. "Is this the terrifying presence you warned us about?" Carnelian blinked, wondering if her senses had truly failed her. "Run!" the girl shrieked in terror. "The forest guardian, Marak, is hunting me." Carnelian narrowed her eyes, demanding a reason, but the trembling girl refused to speak. Sio exploded with indignation, scolding Carnelian for her coldness toward a fragile lady, but before he could finish, Carnelian roared, "Everyone down, I wasn't wrong." The monster was here. The sky above split open as a gigantic hand descended from the heavens. Sentinel Marak landed like a god of war. Yet, to Carnelian's spiritual sight, this so-called sentinel looked no different than a malevolent evil spirit, unintimidated. Carnelian stepped forward. "Why is a guardian hunting a defenseless girl?" Marak's voice boomed like thunder. Trespassing was a capital offense. "And for the record," he growled, "I am not an evil spirit." The giant was furious. Carnelian casually pointed a thumb at Melquin. "He gets misunderstood too. Maybe you two should swap stories." Marak paused, utterly baffled. How could anyone misunderstand such a beautiful, delicate fairy? Melquin blushed, averting his gaze. "Actually, I am a man." Instantly, the light died in Marak's eyes. His world shattered into 1,000 pieces. "See," Carnelian scoffed, "you are not special. Now stop being a nuisance, you evil spirit." That was the last straw. Roaring with fury, Marak swung his massive weapon, the ground trembling beneath the force. "I told you to stop calling me that." Just then, the chief's necklace erupted with blinding light. Marak froze, instantly recognizing the aura of Lord Theseus. Seizing the moment, Carnelian shouted that they were guests of Theseus. She demanded he sheath his weapon and lead them to his master immediately. Marak lowered his weapon, the battle over, but he had no intention of being their tour guide. He owed them nothing. With a huff, he vanished into thin air. "That stinky evil spirit," Carnelian muttered through gritted teeth. "Next time that I see him, he is dead meat." The mysterious girl stared at them, wide-eyed. "I can't believe it." "You actually talked him down," Carnelian shrugged, tapping the glowing necklace. They had this trinket to thank for avoiding a massacre. Theseus was clearly a legend among legends. The girl looked at them with newfound awe. "And you people, you are extraordinary too." She thanked them profusely but turned to leave. Her children were waiting. Sio's brain short-circuited. Children. He could not compute. How could this beautiful lady be clinging to Julian one moment and talking about being a mother the next? But then realization struck like lightning. "Chase her," Carnelian commanded. "She knows where Theseus is." Following her was their only lead. After 2.5 grueling hours of trekking, they stumbled upon a miracle. Hidden deep within the savage forest lay a sprawling metropolis. This was the legendary Theseus city. Carnelian was baffled by the existence of this hidden town. Julian assured her that once they found the sage, all secrets would be revealed. Residents directed them to the center of the city to meet the master. They had to brave the Tower of Theseus. They breached the tower and headed toward the depths. Carnelian could not shake the feeling that this place was entirely too strange. Suddenly, Melquin spotted a figure lying at the bottom of the abyss. But was this old man truly the legend they sought? He existed only in the deepest abyss, yet his slumber was absolute. Julian and the party gathered around the dormant figure, but even their presence failed to stir him. Patience wore thin as the group waited. Finally, Carnelian's temper snapped. She didn't just wake him, she flipped the entire bed with a roar. Gravity meant nothing. The elderly man and his mattress were launched airborne in a spectacular arc. Carnelian dusted off her hands, complaining that the feat had exhausted her, but to everyone's shock, the old man was still snoring. Seo squinted, questioning if this geezer was actually a seal in disguise. No seal would nap in a dump like this, Carnelian scoffed, though Julian reminded her she once snoozed inside a whale. Are you blaming me right now? Carnelian shrieked. The sudden volume finally pierced the old man's dreams, and his eyes snapped open. Still convinced he was an animal, Seo grabbed the stranger's hand. Greetings, I am Seo, your new master. Wham! A fist flew out of nowhere. It wasn't a seal, but the legendary Theseus himself. Seo clutched his chest, exhaling a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thank the heavens. Commanding a grumpy old man in war was not on his bucket list. Julian stepped forward, invoking the name of Rhett. But the name meant nothing. Theseus stared blankly, the memory of Rhett completely erased from his mind. Carnelian demanded he jog his memory, but Theseus fired back. He refused to be lectured by a creature over 1,000 years old. Carnelian froze. Mentioning her age was a death sentence. She was a maiden in her prime. Dare he suggest otherwise? Theseus waved it off. He had disciples scattered like stars across the sky. How could he remember just one? Desperate for answers, Julian pressed on, asking for the path to Durkheart. Take the main road, Theseus grunted dismissively. But that path had been sealed by the notorious Obenbara ages ago. A glint of cunning flashed in Theseus's eyes. He already knew they were fugitives. His solution, simply have Carnelian claim she's a red-eyed human, not a mythical beast. As if anyone would buy such a ridiculous lie, it became clear Theseus had anticipated their arrival, ordering them to lay low for a few days. Trust, however, was in short supply. Carnelian narrowed her eyes, refusing to be swayed by the words of this deceitful geezer, but Julian saw past the facade. He stepped forward, bowing his head to Theseus. He didn't want directions, he wanted to become a disciple. Carnelian gasped. He sought power not for glory, but to shed his weakness, tired of always being the one shielded behind her back. But Theseus's verdict was cruel. You have zero talent for magic. Julian didn't flinch. Talent didn't matter. He demanded a method, any method, to gain explosive strength instantly. He would pay any price, walk any hell. He could no longer stand idly by, watching Carnelian fight his battles while he remained useless. The raw fire in Julian's eyes struck a chord. Theseus sighed. He would grant the boy a chance, but the cost of failure was absolute death. Without hesitation, Julian accepted. It was a gamble with his life on the line. Carnelian's heart sank. She couldn't bear to see him march toward his doom for her sake. But his resolve was iron. Carnelian realized with a heavy heart that no words could stop a man who had found his purpose. Leaving the Tower of Theseus, Carnelian's fury boiled over. She cursed Theseus as a charlatan and scolded Julian for his reckless naivety. Their argument was cut short. Whispers rippled through the street. A knight had fallen, bathed in blood. Instinct took over. Carnelian shoved through the gathering crowd, her senses screaming that this town held dark secrets. Shock arrested her. The battered figure was none other than Hessen, and the man he served was the very knight sent to hunt them down. Irony could be cruel. The hunters had become the prey, savaged by the malevolent spirits lurking in the forest. Carnelian's gaze locked onto the master's badge. It was undeniable. These men were enemies, dispatched to mount her head on a wall. Hessen, trembling, spilled the truth. Yes, they had come to kill, but the forest horrors had stripped them of their arrogance and their way. Mercy was not in Carnelian's nature. Her blade sang as she drew it, ready to execute the threat. But before the steel could fall, a familiar silhouette stepped in. It was Alice, the mysterious girl from the woods here. She wasn't a stranger. She was the town's guardian angel and healer. Her magic had snatched Hessen's master from the jaws of death. The children surrounding her were orphans, all sheltered by her boundless kindness. The purity of the children washed away the tension. Even the fierce Carnelian felt her walls crumble as she joined their innocent games. For the first time, A creature who needed no sustenance felt the warmth of hunger. As twilight deepened into night, the manor fell into a hushed silence. In sleep, Carnelian's face lost its sharp edge, replaced by a serenity she rarely showed the world. Julian watched her, a painful realization dawning. Perhaps this peaceful life was what she had truly craved all along, but sleep evaded him, and Alice noticed. If burdens keep you awake, let tea soothe the soul. She beckoned him to the balcony, the aroma of brewing leaves filling the air. Under the brilliant gaze of the moon, they sat, two souls finding solace in the quiet of the night. Julian finally voiced his inner turmoil. Since the moment Carnelian became his master, a part of him had lived in denial. He had survived hell and found a glimmer of hope, yet the fear of losing it all clawed at his heart. Alice smiled sadly. She understood the weight of being lost. Townspeople vanished nightly into the dark, yet she refused to mourn. She believed they would return. That unwavering faith was her shield. "Julian," she whispered, her voice like a gentle breeze, "the road is hard, but you must trust the fire within you." Dawn broke, painting the sky with new resolve. Julian found Carnelian, his eyes burning with determination. He was ready to ascend. When Julian insisted on seeking out Theseus, Carnelian rejected the idea instantly, her face cold as ice. With arrogance radiating from her, she declared she would rather roam the gutter than step foot in Theseus's tower, turning her back on him and vanishing into the distance. Arriving at the tower, Julian found Theseus engraving runes onto a massive stone tablet. Essio assumed it was a grand artifact to stabilize the structure, but hilariously, it was nothing more than a gaudy ornament. Julian's eyes burned with determination as he declared himself ready. His only desire was to transcend his limits and become stronger. Just as Julian braced himself for training, Theseus began digging through a pile of junk, finally pulling out a dusty blade after a chaotic search. Julian accepted the weapon, and driven by sudden curiosity, he gripped the hilt to unsheath it, but he was wholly unprepared for what happened next. The moment the metal was exposed, a violent shockwave of lightning tore through his body. Theseus scrambled to stop him, screaming, "You lunatic, are you trying to get yourself killed?" Theseus couldn't hold back his curses. The blade possessed terrifying power, but it carried a deadly curse that devoured the user's very life force with every swing. This cursed artifact was named Irreversible, a blade rumored to be possessed by a demon that harvested vitality. "If you desire true power," Theseus warned, "you must only draw this blade when you have someone to protect with your life, not with the hesitation you showed just now." His gaze hardened as he added, "If you fear death, hand it back to me immediately." Defying expectations, Julian slammed the sword into the sheath at his waist. He was done running away, fully accepting that godlike power required a devastating price. That was the heavy burden of wielding infertile. Meanwhile, Carnelian was still fuming with indignation, cursing her master for being both feeble and foolish. She wandered along the riverbank until a sudden impulse drove her to seek the water's origin. Carnelian moved with supernatural speed, tracing the winding currents upstream. To her shock, the river ended at a glowing magic circle. She instinctively drew her blade, clashing steel against steel to block a surprise attack from Merrick. What was he doing here? Sparks flew as the duel between Carnelian and Merrick escalated, but Theseus suddenly intervened, halting the clash. "Old man, explain yourself," she snapped. Carnelian was bewildered. She knew Julian had gone to find Theseus, so how could the old master be standing here right now? Theseus smirked, realizing her confusion, and revealed that Julian was likely conversing with an illusion, or perhaps he was already enduring the test. Carnelian's pupils trembled in horror at the word test, and Theseus, perplexed by her intense reaction, simply muttered, "Shut up." In a flash of crimson light, Carnelian vanished, reappearing instantly to cleave Theseus's body in two. "I shouldn't be the target of your rage," Theseus's voice echoed, unharmed and whole. "Isn't the enemy you truly hate yourself?" Fury exploded within her. She slashed wildly at the apparition, but Theseus merely materialized behind her like a ghost. "Carnelian is just a label given by others," he whispered, piercing her soul. "Who are you really? Just a lost girl with cursed red eyes." Meanwhile, back at the tower, Essio begged on his knees for a weapon, watching as Theseus once again rummaged through his piles of trash. The master carelessly tossed a slender, fragile-looking blade to him, yet Essio grabbed it with trembling excitement. convinced it was a legendary artifact. Theseus shrugged indifferently. It's just a sharp piece of metal. Use it well, and it cuts things. That is all. Essio's face fell in crushing disappointment. There was zero magical aura. You ungrateful brat. Theseus barked. If you don't want it, hand it over. While Theseus fumed, the unconscious knight at Alice's residence finally stirred, and Hessen rushed to brief his master on the dire situation. Suddenly, Hessen froze. Sensing a chilling aura, the door creaked open, and Carnelian stepped in, her presence filling the room. Carnelian yawned, claiming the town was boring, but the knight's blood ran cold the moment he locked eyes with her crimson gaze. The shock jolted him upright, his body tense as he realized even Hessen had shifted into a combat stance. Are you that legendary red-eyed seal? He stammered. Carnelian smirked dangerously. Calling a delicate girl like me a monster? How rude. Hessen stood frozen, unsure how to handle the entity before him, but Cayman quickly stepped forward, bowing his head in apology. He admitted his rudeness, to which she replied coolly, Is that so? Then stop looking at me as if I'm a sealed calamity. She scoffed internally, amazed that anyone was foolish enough to buy her act, while Cayman, completely duped, apologized profusely again. Hessen finally regained his composure, explaining that Cayman had only survived the earlier danger thanks to her intervention. Seeing Cayman's reverence, Carnelian's thoughts drifted back to Julian, but a sudden noise interrupted her reverie. My master. No, my beloved should be returning. She corrected herself, spinning on her heel to leave, leaving Cayman unable to tear his gaze away from her. He had never witnessed such ethereal beauty. Beside him, Hessen was left completely speechless by the bizarre interaction. If only Cayman knew what kind of monster she truly was. The scene shifted to Ced's manor, bathed in a beautiful sunset, where Ced lay stripped of magic and heavily bandaged. Does seeing me broken like this bring you joy? Ced rasped, glaring at the woman standing before him. It was his brother's wife, standing in cold silence. I suppose you'll never show me kindness, he sneered, because like your late husband was terrified of my growing power, and my own brother challenged me to a death match out of fear. Isn't that hilarious? You people are so tedious. The last time you showed any real emotion was when my sword carved out his heart. Ced laughed darkly. My ruin and your pathetic existence. We really are a match made in hell. Just as Evian reached for the handle, intending to find aid for Ced, the door swung open. A man with hair like deep sapphires stood before her. It was Leopold von Massick. He had arrived with a singular purpose to witness the aftermath of Sai's critical injury. The entire empire held its breath, secretly praying for Sai's demise. After all, his death would pave the way for Leopold to ascend the throne of power. Yet, Leopold possessed a code of honor unlike the vultures circling the wounded. Meanwhile, the scene shifted. Carnelian descended the stairs, her eyes locking onto the returning figures of Julian and Seo. My darling, you have finally returned to me, Carnelian cooed, gliding toward Julian with unsettling cheer. Instantly, a chill ran down their spines. Both Julian and Seo suspected Carnelian had finally lost her mind. Leaning in, her breath tickled Julian's ear as she whispered a terrifying command. From this moment on, they were to play the part of devoted lovers. Her eyes then snapped to Seo standing behind him, narrowing with a murderous glare. If they dared to break character, death would be a mercy. The word darling sent Julian's soul ascending to the heavens, floating in bliss. Seo, however, valued his life too much to linger in the splash zone and fled the scene without a backward glance. Carnelian's gaze sharpened. Falling upon the blade at Julian's hip, she recognized that steel instantly, yet feigned ignorance to trap him, asking innocently what he carried. Upon confirming it was a gift from Theseus, the atmosphere grew heavy. She ordered Julian to sit. This was not a request. The moment he sat, her composure shattered. Why did you accept this cursed blade? Are you trying to play the tragic hero? Her fury blazed hotter than fire. Do you intend to throw your life away for my sake? I refuse to accept such a foolish sacrifice. I don't want to hear it. Her overwhelming aura crushed the air from his lungs, silencing him, but Julian had reached his limit. He slammed his hand against the table, rising to his feet. The sudden defiance left Carnelian stunned. I know I am weak. I am unworthy to be your master. His voice trembled with raw emotion, but being a burden is a fate worse than death. You don't need to protect me like this. Just become stronger, so I can transfer my contract to someone else. A heavy silence stretched between them, and finally, Julian stumbled forward, closing the distance. No, that is a lie. I don't want you to serve anyone else. I thought letting you go was right, but I was being selfish. I simply cannot bear to be the shackle that limits your potential. I swear to you, Carnelian, I will become stronger. I will ascend. I just want to remain by your side for as long as destiny allows. So please, believe in me. Even as he spoke the harshest truths, he collapsed onto her shoulder, exhausted. Carnelian softened, wrapping her arms around the fool who held her heart. She had long abandoned hope for such tenderness. Meanwhile, hearing the commotion, Cayman descended the stairs, intending to break up a fight. While instead, he froze. The two were locked in a desperate, intimate embrace. Realizing they had an audience, Carnelian panicked. She shoved Julian away instinctively, forgetting that her monstrous strength was not something the fragile Julian could withstand. Horrified, she rushed to scrape him off the floor. Julian opened his mouth to complain about his abusive master, but a swift blow to his abdomen forcibly silenced him. Blushing furiously, Carnelian hissed that he should only use the title master when they were in private. Witnessing this chaotic display, Cayman could only marvel at the couple's unique and painful preferences. Julian wanted to clear his name, but one look from Carnelian sealed his lips. After an awkward silence, the battered duo finally exited the room. Outside, they found Seo on the ground, muttering like a madman. He had been pining for Amaryllis, but in his delusion, her beautiful face morphed into the terrifying visages of Julian and Carnelian. Seo let out a blood-curdling scream and scrambled away like a child caught stealing candy. Just then, Alice returned, trailing the children behind her, but she brought a shadow darker than night. Merrick was coming, and when he arrived, this sanctuary and the children within it would cease to exist. Julian begged her to flee, to survive, but Alice's resolve was made of iron. She would live and die with this city. Julian refused to accept it. How could he watch her throw her life away? With a sad smile, Alice confessed that this illusion had given her the greatest joy of her existence, and she would not trade it for survival. He realized words were useless against such conviction. Frustrated, he threw open the door to the outside world, but his breath hitched in his throat. The bustling city was gone. In its place stood only withered, dead trees surrounding a solitary, desolate house. High above, Merrick hovered like a god of judgment. Julian's hand flew to his hilt. He would fight even if it cost his soul. Yet, Merrick looked down with arrogance, certain the boy would never draw his blade. Julian could endure no more. He gripped the weapon, ready to unleash hell, but a slender hand caught his wrist. It was Alice, silently pleading with him to stop. How could he simply stand by and watch her die? Then, the devastating truth hit him. Even Carnelian warned him to stay his hand. Everything here, the city, the children, even Alice, they were merely illusions conjured by Theseus. Alice did not fear oblivion. She only wished to live on in the memories of those she loved. The children, too, began their farewells, innocent souls who seemed to understand their fate. They huddled around Alice, waving goodbye with heartbreaking smiles. Cayman bowed, vowing that their debt of life would be etched in his soul forever. Carnelian and Seo forced cheerful expressions through their grief as they said their goodbyes. With a final look of peace, Alice gently closed the door. Merrick's spell descended. The house dissolved, leaving only the charred husk of a giant tree. Julian stood amidst the ashes, unable to comprehend that living, breathing souls had just vanished into nothingness. The great sage, Theseus, descended alongside Melquent, his voice calm amidst the somber atmosphere. He urged them to cast aside their sorrow, revealing the harsh truth. This magnificent city had been nothing more than a graveyard of dead trees all along. But before he could finish his monologue, Carnelian shoved him aside with zero hesitation. She and Seo seized Melquent, demanding to know where on earth he had vanished to. The ignored sage cleared his throat awkwardly, signaling that he, the architect of this reality, was still standing right there. He resumed his tale, weaving the truth of this phantom city. It was born from the lingering memories of the burnt forest, with Alice as the great world tree at its heart. Her time as a human must have been filled with chaos and confusion. Julian clenched his fist, unable to comprehend the logic. Why would Theseus weave such a complex illusion only to let it crumble into dust? Theseus offered no direct answer, turning the question back on him. Why did Julian fight to stop the demon Mara? All beings act according to their convictions, even if the end remains out of reach. The words Alice spoke that fateful night echoed in Julian's mind. The path is arduous and long, but as long as you keep walking, you will reach the end, Julian. Theseus smiled softly. It was not all for naught. After all, the memory of Alice now lives on within them, his purpose fulfilled. The sage prepared to fade away. But first, he snapped his fingers, casting a powerful illusion on Carnelian. In an instant, her crimson pupils shifted to a harmless crystal blue. Theseus warned that as long as she kept her temper in check, the cursed red of her eyes would remain hidden from the world. On the outside, Carnelian smiled like an angel, claiming to be the picture of serenity, but internally, she was screaming curses, convinced the old man set her up to fail. With that final gift, Theseus dissolved into thin air, leaving only his blessing upon the weary travelers. Cayman approached her with a nod. Finally, she no longer had to live in fear of being hunted as the catastrophic red-eyed seal. Hessen stepped forward, his expression solemn. The time for farewells had arrived. Hoping their paths would cross again under better stars, Cayman and Hessen turned their backs and marched toward their own destiny. Carnelian didn't waste a second, slinging her arm around Julian's shoulder with a grin. She, too, looked forward to the day they would reunite. It was only then that Julian recalled the burning question. Melquent confessed he had sought out Theseus to demand training. He would follow the sage to cultivate his power, parting ways with the main party. Theseus had refused at first, but Meek intervened, swaying the sage's decision. Carnelian found it suspicious that a so-called evil spirit would be so helpful, but Meek despised that title. However, Essio noticed something strange. The spirit Meek was actually blushing while looking at Melquent. Melquent shrugged with a straight face, declaring that love transcends gender and species. The remaining trio stood in stunned silence, and just like that, the party of 4 was reduced to a party of 3. Melquent vowed to hunt them down once his training was complete to repay his debts. As he left, Julian cast one last gaze at the spot where the city once stood. Though the landscape had reverted to a desolate graveyard of trees, the memories forged there would remain etched in his soul forever. Their journey pressed on toward the holy city, the absolute sanctuary and headquarters of the Orthodox Church. Masquerading as devout pilgrims to reach Durkart, they soon reached a hilltop overlooking the sacred grounds. But the reality was a slap in the face. This was no holy land. The streets were crawling with addicts and ladies of the night. Far from sacred, the city reeked of depravity and evil. Fortunately, it was merely a checkpoint on their way to Durkart. But fate had other plans. The docks were swarming with border guards. An old captain delivered the bad news. All routes to Durkart were completely sealed off. The authorities were apparently bored out of their minds, conducting a massive manhunt for the legendary red-eyed seal. At the mention of the red-eyed seal, Carnelian froze, her body trembling with suppressed anxiety. But suddenly, a light bulb went off in Isio's head. "Why don't we just camp here?" he suggested. Carnelian roared in disbelief. How could he think of sleeping in the middle of a crisis? Sleep is best when facing death, was the orc's philosophy. Reluctantly, they agreed to lay low. Meanwhile, in the shadows of a nearby mine, a chase was underway. 2 hulking brutes were hunting down a silver-haired girl whose only crime was stealing a single apple. Panic blinded her path, and she sprinted straight toward Julian, who was waiting for Carnelian. Crash. They collided, tumbling to the hard ground. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she scrambled to grab her apple and flee, but it was too late. The predators had caught up to their prey. Before she could rise, a heavy boot slammed into her abdomen. She collapsed, gasping for air, unable to move through the agony. Julian stepped forward, mana flaring to intervene, but froze. Cold steel pressed against his throat from behind. Just as the thugs prepared to assault Julian and the girl, a silhouette emerged on the rooftops above, like a hawk diving for its kill. The figure leapt dagger in hand. He descended upon the man tormenting the girl. With a wet thud, he drove his blade into the man's throat, ending him instantly. This ruthless savior was Torben, the girl's brother and a cold-blooded member of the Assassin's Guild. He didn't waste a breath. In the same motion as the kill, he whipped a second dagger behind him blindly. The blade flew true, striking the ambusher behind Julian with terrifying accuracy. Torben gazed down at his sister, who was frantically gathering the spilled apples. "Sharon," he scolded, his voice low, "I told you to stop taking these risks." "And watch the children starve," she retorted. Torben sighed, the weight of their world pressing on his shoulders. He understood her heart, but he couldn't lose her. But the danger wasn't over. Torben spun around, leveling a fresh blade directly at Julian's heart. Julian had witnessed the theft, and now Torben wanted him silenced forever. Seeing the assassin approach, Julian braced himself, nervously gripping his weapon in white-knuckled fear. Suddenly, the heavens split open. A dazzling sword light crashed down from above, slamming into the earth between them. Carnelian had arrived. But Torben was a seasoned killer from the Assassin's Guild. He didn't flinch, refusing to abandon the hunt just because a new challenger appeared. Carnelian wielded a massive greatsword, yet she moved with the grace of a dancer. She effortlessly raised the Titan blade, deflecting the flying dagger. Torben seized the opening while she blocked. He launched himself into the air, flashing behind Carnelian in a blur of speed. But Carnelian was battle-hardened. Without even glancing back, she swung her heavy blade in a blind counter. Torben's eyes widened as he barely twisted his body to dodge the steel storm. The assassin was stunned. How could she manipulate such a colossal weapon with zero sluggishness? Her strength was monstrous. The clash paused. Carnelian turned to check on Julian. Hearing her call the boy "Master," Torben sneered in confusion, asking if this powerhouse was a mere slave. The moment those words left his lips, the temperature plummeted. An overwhelming killing intent flooded the entire alleyway. Torben's instinct screamed at him to move. He ducked just as the giant sword obliterated the space where his head had been a millisecond ago. But the assault wasn't over. Carnelian's fist, packed with the force of a battering ram, was already rushing toward him. It slammed into his abdomen, launching his body into the air like a rag doll. The impact was devastating. The intense pain shut down his nervous system, and Torben lost consciousness before he even hit the ground. "Do not jump to conclusions. I am no slave." Carnelian pulled her giant sword from the rubble, her voice cold as ice. "I am a seal." Her eyes devoid of mercy, she raised the massive blade high, prepared to bring it down and end Torben's life right then and there. "Stop!" Julian threw himself in front of Carnelian. She froze, looking displeased. If she hadn't halted her blade in that split second, Julian would have been cut in two. Julian pleaded with her. "Carnelian, wait. He isn't evil. He's just desperate to protect his sister." Julian turned and extended a hand to the fallen assassin, but Torben slapped it away. Staggering to his feet alone, Carnelian assessed their grim situation. Every escape route was blocked by guards. They were trapped. From the shadows. The battered Torben finally spoke up. "You need to cross the border." He claimed to know a way, but warned it carried immense risk. Carnelian glared at him, warning him not to play games with their lives. Torben revealed the plan. They would have to disguise themselves as merchandise in the illegal slave trade. Carnelian realized the logic immediately. Since it was an illegal operation, they used secret smuggling routes that the authorities didn't patrol. Torben offered to introduce them to a contact, but Carnelian remained suspicious. Torben quickly clarified his true motive. He desperately wanted Julian to leave the city. With a monster like Carnelian around, he feared his sister might accidentally provoke her and get killed. But the sister in question, Sharon, had long since vanished, taking the stolen apples with her. It seemed the siblings had a complicated relationship. Later, back at the hideout, Seo asked why Julian and Carnelian had been gone for so long. "You two must have gone on a romantic date, right?" Seo teased, staring firmly at them. Julian and Carnelian both turned beet red, flustered by the accusation. Just as Seo was about to celebrate his correct guess, boom! The giant sword embedded itself into the wall, inches from his ear. "If you dare speak such nonsense again," Carnelian hissed through gritted teeth, "I will sell you as a slave." Meanwhile, Sharon had reached the convent. The director hugged the stolen apples with tears of joy. The orphans had been starving for too long. After delivering the food, Sharon left, completely unaware that Torben was watching over her from the shadows. The next day, the docks were chaotic. Crew members bustled about as the captain barked orders for departure. A burly thug and a thin man were sent below deck to inspect the cargo. They descended into the gloom. which was filled with bound captives. They were chatting idly when their flashlights landed on a trembling young girl in the corner. It was Sharon, the girl who had delivered the apples yesterday. She struggled against her ropes, but it was useless. The thin man grabbed Sharon's face, bragging to his partner that she would fetch a high price. But wait, he grinned. This isn't the best part. He pointed behind a pillar to the shadows. Look there, that is the finest merchandise I have seen all year. When the big guy's eyes adjusted, his face flushed with disbelief. The premium merchandise was none other than Carnelian. Seeing the captain was away, the big guy flashed an evil, predatory smile and began walking toward the captives. He was completely captivated by Carnelian's beauty. Ignoring the thin man's frantic warnings, the brute approached her with a lecherous grin. He reached out, unable to control his lust. Snap. In an instant, Carnelian shattered her restraints like they were made of paper. A fist containing the force of a mountain smashed directly into the big guy's skull. The thin man opened his mouth to scream, but Carnelian didn't give him the chance. Another punch flew out, silencing him instantly. With the minions unconscious, Carnelian immediately untied Julian. They found Seo nearby, who had already passed out from severe seasickness. But then, Carnelian noticed another familiar face in the ship's hold. It was Sharon. Julian was confused. Why was she here, surprisingly? Sharon wasn't scared. She was furious. She hadn't been captured. She had her own agenda. Sharon had been dragged aboard against her will by Torben, but her resolve remained unbroken. She vowed to return to the holy city and save those innocent children, no matter the cost. Carnelian, with a devious smirk, offered the vessel to Sharon for her return trip, casually mentioning that she intended to hijack the ship by force anyway. Meanwhile, tension suffocated the maritime hall in the holy city as Crowley slammed his hand down, demanding Archibald cease his interference in the city's sacred affairs immediately. But Archibald stood like an immovable mountain, his eyes cold as he declared his true purpose. He had arrived to enforce a complete and total blockade of the holy city. Deputy Chief Crowley, Archibald challenged, his voice dripping with icy confidence, if you believe you possess the strength to defeat me, you are welcome to try. Jolted from his slumber, the captain stormed out in a rage, only to freeze when he faced a woman with a smile sweet as honey and a fist hurtling toward him like a cannonball. The friendly exchange ended in seconds. The captain collapsed, beaten to a bloody pulp by Carnelian's overwhelming physical prowess. Terrified and broken, he hastily pledged his loyalty to Carnelian, trembling as he revealed that their journey to Durkheart would take far longer than anticipated. Carnelian's mood darkened instantly at the news, but a sailor's panicked cry from the lookout shattered the moment. Captain, massive obstacles dead ahead. The captain was baffled, knowing no reefs existed in these waters, but Carnelian sensed the danger immediately. Her hand flew to her sword hilt as she realized they weren't facing rocks, but an entire naval fleet encircling them. Standing at the prow of the lead ship, a commander with flowing white hair raised a magical amplifier to his lips, his presence commanding absolute authority. Listen well. Unidentified vessel, lay down your arms and surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Hearing that thunderous voice, Carnelian's eyes went wide in disbelief. She had just seen the owner of that voice recently. Meanwhile, Julian, hearing the commotion, rushed onto the deck, his heart racing as he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. But the moment the command echoed across the water, Julian froze in his tracks. There was no mistaking the righteous tone of Knight Cayman. Julian never imagined destiny would arrange a reunion with Knight Cayman in the middle of the ocean. While Cayman looked down from his warship, stunned to see familiar faces, Carnelian's mind raced, and she quickly devised a plan. They were disguised as slaves. After all, Captain, she whispered, her voice low and dangerous, come here. You know our role is that of helpless slaves. Correct if you wish to keep your head attached to your neck. You know exactly how to act. As the fleet pulled alongside, Cayman and Hessen leaped onto the deck. Cayman was confused by Carnelian's presence, but duty compelled him to demand their surrender. Suddenly, Carnelian dropped her massive greatsword with a heavy clang and sprinted toward Cayman, her entire demeanor shifting in a split second. The sudden transformation stunned even Julian. She threw herself into Cayman's arms, trembling violently as Cayman stood there, stiff and unsure where to place his hands. Sir Cayman, I was so terrified. I thought I was doomed to a life of slavery. Carnelian's voice dripped with coquettish fear, causing a deep crimson blush to spread across the innocent knight's face. Yet, even as she sobbed, she cast a terrifying, murderous glare back at the captain, who hurriedly recited his lines like a frightened puppet, ordering her back below deck. Watching Carnelian's Oscar-worthy performance of a damsel in distress, Hessen felt a headache coming on. The sheer absurdity was painful to watch. Even if Cayman believed the act, surely he couldn't miss the colossal greatsword she had just dropped. "Silence," Cayman roared, his chivalry fully ignited. "You dare treat her as a slave and threaten her in my presence," Cayman bellowed at the trembling captain. "Fear not, milady. As long as I draw breath, no harm shall come to you." Cayman gently took Carnelian's hand, offering comfort with a heroic smile. It seemed the knight's density was truly a legendary skill in itself. Hessen sighed, realizing he had overestimated his leader's perception, thus riding aboard Cayman's secure fleet. Carnelian and the party began their return to the Holy City. "Thank you, Sir Cayman, for saving us," Carnelian said with a sweet smile, while internally she screamed curses about being dragged back to the very place they tried to escape. Cayman, oblivious to her inner turmoil, magnanimously offered his future aid, practically beaming with the pride of a savior. Just then, Hessen spotted a suspicious bag of powder. Seizing the opportunity, the group used the investigation of the substance as an excuse to slip away from the knights. Their escape route via the slave trade was now burned. Their funds were depleted, and they were back in the lion's den with nowhere to turn. Suddenly, Sharon stepped forward, her eyes burning with intensity. She claimed she could solve their dilemma, but the fury etched on her face promised a storm was brewing. "Follow me," she commanded, though her tone carried a weight far heavier than her simple words suggested. Inside the cathedral, the atmosphere was thick with violence. A muscular thug held the director by the collar, while apples, likely a spilled offering, lay scattered across the stone floor. The brute demanded the source of the supplies, his voice booming, but the battered director kept his lips sealed, refusing to betray Sharon's location. Silence was met with brutality as the man slammed the director against the wall. A nun, unable to watch the holy man suffer, cried out for mercy. Her plea was answered instantly by a throwing dagger that whistled through the air, embedding itself dangerously close to her. Realizing the director wouldn't break, the thug turned his sadistic gaze toward the trembling nun, shifting his target to someone more vulnerable. Outside the cathedral, Torben sat in the shadows, meticulously polishing his blade as an elite of the Assassin's Guild. The faint sound of approaching footsteps triggered his killer instincts. In a blur of motion, he grabbed his dagger and crouched by the entrance, his body tense as a coiled spring, sensing impending trouble. The footsteps grew louder and heavier, and Torben's grip on the hilt tightened, his knuckles turning white as he prepared to strike. The moment the door breached, Torben descended from above like a hawk, but recognition flashed in his eyes, and he halted the blade millimeters from Sharon's face, showing terrifying control. "Was selling me into slavery not enough for you?" Sharon hissed, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "Now you intend to take my life as well." Facing the cold steel, Sharon didn't flinch. Torben was bewildered by her return, but before he could speak, Julian and the others filed into the room behind her. "What gave you the right to decide my fate?" Sharon's voice trembled with suppressed rage, her anger toward Torben far from subsiding. Torben revealed the grim reality. The organization was tearing the city apart to find the thief. If they found Sharon now, her execution was guaranteed. A heavy silence fell over the three of them. What cursed object could Sharon have taken to invite such a calamity? The truth was uglier than they imagined. Torben confessed she had stolen the poisoned apples, the very source of the narcotics plaguing the holy city. Those fruits were the raw essence of addiction. They were the root of all evil that had turned this sacred place into a den of sin. Sharon froze, her soul shattering. She had fed those very apples to the innocent orphans at the cathedral. Memories of her smiling face as she handed them to the director flashed before her eyes. She stared at her trembling hands, drowning in a sea of endless despair. Torben reached out, his heart aching for his sister's agony, but she slapped his hand away with cold fury. "You knew I was taking food to the starving children," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Why did you stay silent?" "I am nothing like you," she spat, turning her back on him. "I refuse to close my eyes to this wickedness." "Even with eyes open, you choose blindness." Torben pressed his lips into a thin line, the weight of his own silent struggles crushing him. Julian stepped forward, his gaze filled with concern for the assassin's turmoil. Torben clenched his fist to hide his weakness. He offered a secret escape route, but the price was Sharon's safety. "Take her with you," he demanded. But Carnelian scoffed at the demand. "We accept the deal, Torben, but if she chooses to stay, we will not force her hand." Julian held back the furious Carnelian. Torben lowered his head, knowing his sister's stubborn heart all too well. Having fled her brother's shelter, Sharon raced through the dark alleys of the holy city, driven by pure panic. She burst into the cathedral, gasping for air. "The director, the children, are they safe?" she cried out. Trembling with terror, she dared not look up, but a cold voice sliced through the air. "So, you are the little thief." Before she could react, darkness descended. A sack covered her head, and her consciousness faded into the void. The scene shifted to the sinister maw of the Assassin's Guild. Torben approached the gate with heavy steps. Guards barred his path. The guildmaster is not to be disturbed, they warned, weapons ready. But a commanding voice echoed from within the hall. "Let him enter." The guard stepped aside. Torben crossed the threshold, but the sight waiting for him ignited a firestorm in his blood. The guildmaster stood there, gloating over a broken form. It was Sharon, brutally tortured and cast aside. Her unconscious body was a canvas of agony, covered in blood and wounds that screamed of the torment she had endured. Though magma bubbled in his veins, Torben's face remained a mask of ice. He looked at her as if she were a stranger. The guildmaster sneered, pointing at the heap on the floor. "This is the rat who stole our precious goods." He crushed Sharon under his boot. "Disposal is your duty," he commanded Torben. "Throw this trash to the beasts in the forest." Without a word, Torben hoisted his sister onto his shoulder. He turned and walked out, his composure terrifyingly perfect. The guildmaster watched him go, his eyes piercing like daggers as he lit a cigar in silence. Torben moved slowly through the guild grounds, but the moment the shadows hid him, his pace quickened. He broke into a frantic sprint. His nightmare was reality. He bit his lip until it bled to suppress a scream of pure anguish. That monster dared to touch her. A storm of murderous rage swirled within Torben's soul. He rushed toward the cathedral, the only sanctuary. Sharon needed a healer immediately, or she would be lost. He pounded on the heavy wood. Every second was a step toward death. The door creaked open, but the face that appeared was not the director's. It was an assassin. The guildmaster had anticipated this betrayal and set a trap. Cold steel flashed toward Torben's throat, but the enemy had underestimated the skill of a true elite. In the blink of an eye, Torben vanished from the blade's path. As he dodged, his own blade sang through the air, burying itself in the attacker's side. The fool's reckless opening was his undoing. Agony tore through the assassin, forcing a guttural scream as he crumbled. Torben gave no quarter. He ripped the blade free and delivered a silencing blow to the skull. He laid Sharon gently on a bed. As her eyes fluttered open, he wasted no breath on words, turning to hunt for a doctor. But as his hand touched the door handle, the guildmaster's voice boomed from outside. The trap had fully sprung. An army of killers filled the street. "We raised you from the gutter," the guildmaster spat, "and this treason is your gratitude." The roar shook the air. Memories flooded back of a cruel father who sold his own flesh and blood to the guild just to survive. The guildmaster had forged him into a weapon. Now, young Torben's past and present collided as armed men closed in for the kill. In this merciless world, only the survivors earned the right to walk the path of shadows. Among all the candidates, Torben was the sole child to crawl out of that hell alive. Sharon jolts upright, her body trembling uncontrollably. Despite the grudge she holds in her heart, Torben is still the brother she simply cannot hate. Her throat tightens. She wants to scream at him to run, but she knows he won't listen. Torben seals the door, turning to face the entire Assassin's Guild alone. The masquerade is finally over. There is no need for shadows anymore. Every blade is unsheathed, thirsting for blood. He fights not for himself, but for her with blinding speed. Torben's daggers dance through the air, claiming lives in the blink of an eye. An army stands against him, yet fear is absent from his eyes. He carves a bloody path through his former comrades with cold, merciless precision. Outside, the symphony of steel and screams rings out. Sharon knows this nightmare is her fault, and she can only pray to the heavens that he survives. A vicious strike, Torben stands as a one-man army, slaughtering this wave of assassins with savage efficiency. The guildmaster watches the carnage with a twisted smirk. He remains calm, knowing the full might of the guild is converging on this very spot to crush one boy. No matter how fierce the beast, stamina has its limits. Torben cannot win a war of attrition against these numbers. But suddenly, A frantic cry shatters the guildmaster's confidence. A subordinate screams the impossible. The main headquarters has been annihilated by a single woman. The guildmaster's mind reels in disbelief. How could this be the elite forces? Wiped out in an instant. Is it me you are looking for? A crystal clear voice cuts through the chaos. I have finally found you, rats. Why are you wandering around during school hours? Do you know how long I had to search? It is the terrifying prowess of Professor Carnelian. Is this woman truly insane? The guildmaster roars in confusion, sensing nothing until it is too late. Carnelian draws her colossal greatsword, pulling it back like a bowstring ready to fire. The sickening sound of steel severing bone echoes through the hall. The guildmaster spins around in horror, only to see his subordinate instantly decapitated. Before he can blink, Carnelian's massive blade is already pressed against his heart. Who in the hells are you? He cannot fathom such overwhelming pressure. Me. I am just a passing scholar who needs something from you. Meanwhile, Torben follows Julian's group into the heart of the slaughter. The scene is a painting of hell-severed limbs scatter the floor. The headquarters has been completely purged by absolute power. The guildmaster stumbles forward, mind broken by the sight. Professor Carnelian, thank the heavens you came to save me. Torben glances at her, but she waves off the gratitude. She offers a cold truth. She only returned because she did not trust the boy to finish the job. Torben lowers his gaze, silence speaking louder than words. Suddenly, the door to the inner sanctum is ripped off its hinges. The guard who was posted there, he has long since departed from this world. Sio stands amidst the ruin, sword in hand and bored to tears, watching the rat scramble. Found it. The guildmaster frantically rushes toward Carnelian like a desperate dog. This is the map you desired, madam. He offers the bundled blueprints with trembling hands, bowing low to preserve his life. I have delivered as promised. According to our deal, you will spare me. Yes, he dares not even lift his eyes from the floor. Carnelian snatches the map with a smirk. I agreed to spare you, but I never said he would. The guildmaster looks up in terror to see Torben approaching Vessel, a dagger in hand and pure, unadulterated hatred etched into his soul. Torben, have you forgotten who raised you without me? You are nothing, he pleads, desperate to manipulate the boy one last time by invoking Sharon's memory. But the time for words is over, fueled by rage. Torben drives his blade straight through the tyrant's chest. Memories of torture and pain flash before his eyes. As the life fades from his tormentor, a long-suppressed smile finally graces Torben's lips. It is finished. That is where the secret passage lies. He points to a section of the wall, subtly discolored from the rest. Carnelian approaches the stone barrier with a skeptical gaze. She places her hands against the cold stone surface. The grinding of gears can be heard, but Carnelian has no patience for puzzles. She clenches her fist, channeling her aura to shatter the door with a single blow. Boom! A thunderous explosion rocks the foundation, sending shockwaves rippling through the entire chamber. Julian screams her name over the deafening roar. Relax, she laughs. I barely used 10% of my power. She beams at Julian, completely oblivious to the presence behind the dust. As she turns, her eyes go wide. Cayman is walking out from the rubble. Lady Carnelian, what a pleasant surprise. Cayman greets her with that signature charm. Carnelian freezes, her brain short-circuiting. Why is he here? Mr. Cayman, you came to save me again. Instantly switching roles, Carnelian throws herself into Cayman's arms, acting the part of a fragile maiden. Julian watches, utterly speechless at the performance. She sobs dramatically, claiming they were kidnapped and praising Cayman for his timely arrival. Though she awkwardly mentions the kidnappers seem to have mysteriously died, Cayman surveys the absolute massacre surrounding them. Carnelian realizes she made the mess. It was him. It was Mr. Torben who slaughtered them all. We only survived because of him. She points an accusatory finger at the bewildered assassin. Mr. Torben possesses frightening strength. He slaughtered them all single-handedly. Carnelian spun her web of lies, her voice trembling with feigned awe. But what a clumsy fabrication it was, as if a mere butler could annihilate an entire squad. Hessen stood in stunned silence, his gaze heavy. He knew the terrifying truth lurking beneath Carnelian's innocent mask. The wounds tell a different story. These bodies were cleaved by the crushing weight of a greatsword, not the precise slice of a hidden dagger. Worst of all, she had shattered a solid stone wall right before their eyes. Surely, Even Cayman couldn't be blind enough to believe her act this time. Lady Carnelian, truly a terrifying woman. Thank the gods you are safe. Cayman gripped her shoulders, his eyes filled with genuine relief. Hessen's jaw nearly hit the floor. He actually bought it hook, line, and sinker. Amidst the tender moment, a crucial detail emerged. Carnelian learned that Cayman had uncovered a hidden passage lurking just outside the perimeter. That explained the army at their doorstep. Suddenly, boom, a deafening explosion rocked the foundation, threatening to bury them all, but Cayman remained an unshakable mountain. Fear not. My men have merely collapsed the tunnel's exit. The shockwave will not reach us here. Oh, what a relief. Carnelian gasped, clutching her chest, but inside her mind, she was cursing Cayman 100 times over for his reckless destruction. Cayman immediately ordered a ruthless search, determined to unearth any trace of the illicit drug trade. Hold it right there. A voice sharp as a razor cut through the air. It was Crowley, leading his pack of wolves. The very man who had authorized the border army to enter the city had finally arrived to claim his prize. Crowley marched toward Cayman with sneering arrogance. Border dogs should stick to guarding the fence. Do you honestly think you possess the authority of the special forces? Stepping into Cayman's personal space, Crowley's pressure spiked. I am taking command of this operation. Take your mongrels and leave immediately. Cayman's fist clenched until the knuckles turned white. His honor would not allow retreat. My apologies, Commander, but I have no intention of withdrawing today. He stepped forward, a living barricade against Crowley's ambition. You dare defy a direct order, Crowley roared, his face twisted in rage. Our intelligence suggests a rot within the ranks, Cayman declared, his voice cold as steel. Specifically, a connection between the special forces and this criminal syndicate. Are you accusing the Emperor's elite of treason? Crowley's fury erupted like a volcano. I am merely here to purge potential threats to the realm. But the border general stood his ground. Snapping, Crowley ripped his blade from its sheath, the steel singing a deadly note. You ignorant, insolent bastard. In an instant, the special forces brandished their weapons, but the border soldiers were forged in the fires of war. They would not be intimidated. Swords clashed against scabbards as battle lines were drawn. The air crackled with killing intent. One wrong move, and a bloodbath would consume them all. Julian watched in bewildered horror. Why were two armies of the glorious Husvakan Empire pointing blades at each other's throats? Carnelian weighed her options. Intervening meant saving Cayman, but it also meant revealing her monstrous power. Meanwhile, deep within the shadows of the Imperial Palace, my lord, reports indicate the border army has begun probing the special forces. A shadowed aide whispered the urgent news to his superior. If they uncover the secret of the holy city... The mere thought sent the mysterious figure into a fit of chilling laughter. The strong crush enemies at the gates, while the wise dismantle them from the inside. The nobleman leaned back, his eyes gleaming with malice. I wonder, how will the great General Archibald react when the veil is lifted, back at the ruin? The tension had reached its breaking point. Though insults flew like arrows, neither commander struck the first blow. They were locked in a deadly stalemate, balancing on the edge of a knife. A subordinate whispered urgently to Crowley, Sir, we are outnumbered. Before he could respond, the thunder of approaching boots echoed through the hall. Reinforcements, the detachment sent to secure the perimeter, had returned, doubling Cayman's strength in an instant. The scales had tipped. Crowley, realizing the disadvantage, swallowed his pride. Clang. He slammed his sword back into its sheath. Consider yourself lucky today, Cayman. He turned on his heel, seething with humiliated rage. Cayman wasted no time. Sheath weapons, tear this place apart, leave no stone unturned. His eyes burned with resolve. He would find the evidence needed to expose the Special Forces' corruption, no matter the cost. First, the Holy City was sealed, and now this humiliation. Crowley's temper was a powder keg waiting for a spark. He stormed into the apple orchard, the front for their operation, bellowing for the overseer like a mad beast. Cornering the manager, he spat the dire news. The border army has tracked the Assassin's Guild. It is only a matter of time before they march on this very soil. Mobilize every soldier, prepare the ambush. We must strike before they discover the truth. Would they truly be so bold? The Orthodox Church branch leader scoffed, oblivious to the vein throbbing in Crowley's forehead. To strike the church is to strike the divine emperor himself. They would never risk such treason, Crowley snapped, his patience obliterated. I said mobilize the damn army. How dare you question me? I am the branch leader of the... Before the fool could finish, Crowley seized him by the collar, lifting him like a rag doll. His roar shook the walls. Call the soldiers now. If the border army finds this production line, you, me, and your precious poison apples are dead men walking. Do you understand? The leader trembled, silenced by the sheer killing intent. Meanwhile, at the border force outpost, Hessen stood vigilant outside the commander's tent. Inside, Kamen addressed Julian's group, his expression earnest. I require your full cooperation to solve this mystery, and... Oh, absolutely. Commander, Carnelian clasped her hands, blinking innocently. I just hope you catch those scary villains soon. The act continued, flawless as ever. Seo muses internally that she has already exacted punishment upon them all. Then, a voice cuts through the tension. Commander Kamen, I have located the leads on the illicit drugs. The urgent report comes from Kamen's subordinate, standing just outside the command tent. Sensing others inside, the soldier hesitates, but Kamen is not a man of rigid ceremony. He commands the soldier to enter and speak his mind immediately. We have uncovered undeniable proof of transactions between the special forces and the guild. However, the location of the manufacturing facility remains a mystery. The holy city has been sealed iron tight, yet the drug supply flows continues. Kamen realizes the horrifying truth. The source is rotting from within the holy city itself. It is only natural you failed to find the source until now. A familiar voice echoes from the shadows. It is Sharon, supported by Torben. Having returned from the brink of death after stealing the forbidden apples, seeing her battered and bruised, Julian cries out in concern. Sharon grits her teeth, declaring she's recovered enough and she knows exactly where the poisoned orchard lies. Kamen cuts through the pleasantries, his eyes burning with intensity. Tell us, Sharon, where is it? However, the location that falls from her lips sends a shockwave through the entire group. Kamen asks again, in disbelief, but the answer remains the terrifying same. It lies beneath the headquarters of the Husevkin Orthodox Church. The realization hits Kamen like a lightning bolt. That explains why the special forces interfered. To investigate the church is to commit high treason against the state. Official channels are useless now. But Sharon steps forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. I know a secret path inside. Kamen fixes his gaze on this young girl who continues to defy all expectations. For the sake of the children's future, I will lead the way, Sharon vows. But you must promise once the mission is done, we return the way we came. Torben hesitates, fearing for her safety. While Julian looks around in confusion, are we all deploying? Carnelian answers with absolute conviction, yes. The crimson sky bleeds over the Orthodox Church, a grim omen of the unprecedented storm about to shatter their world. Guided by Sharon, Kamen's elite squad infiltrates the depths beneath the holy grounds. Had they not witnessed it with their own eyes, none would believe such darkness existed beneath the light of the church. Torben, guarding the rear, urges Sharon to retreat, but she stands her ground like a statue. At the end of the twisted orchard path, a solitary figure blocks their advance. Kamen signals a halt, the air thick with killing intent. You have finally arrived, Kamen. The man standing in their way is none other than Crowley. So, you were the serpent behind this corruption all along, Crowley. The sound of steel ringing fills the air as Kamen slowly draws his blade. Crowley, you are under arrest. Surrender now or face judgment. Ha 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 ha. Crowley throws his head back in wild, maniacal laughter, unnerving the entire squad. Youth is truly a blessing. Crowley's expression shifts to a sinister sneer. You are brave, Kamen, but woefully naive. This holy city was founded 10 years ago, flooding with refugees from across the empire. The church used those countless innocents as lab rats for their drug experiments. Did you truly think they would hesitate? Do you honestly believe I am the sole mastermind? The scale of the conspiracy is beyond imagination. They have been harvesting ordinary people for years. Julian gasps in horror. Silence, Kamen roars, his patience at an end. Enough of your madness. But mana begins to gather in Crowley's palm. He spins and hurls a blazing fireball. The spell arcs over Kamen's head, exploding violently behind Sharon and Torben at the rear. A wall of fire cuts off their retreat. The fruit trees ignite instantly, and the heavy sound of marching boots shakes the ground. Suddenly, weapon-wielding fanatics and special forces emerge from the shadows. surrounding Cayman's squad. It was a trap from the very beginning. Cayman raises his sword, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. This is no investigation. This is a war. This time, the gloves come off. Crowley grins like a demon. I will not let a single one of you leave this purgatory alive. Steel clashes against enchanted staffs in a symphony of destruction. Every warrior fights with the desperate strength of those facing death. There is no room for mercy on this battlefield. Hold the formation, stay together. Cayman's command cuts through the chaos. They form a defensive ring around Julian and Sharon. Hessen fights like a beast, struggling to parry multiple magical attacks at once. The enemy numbers are overwhelming. A sea of foes separates Hessen from his commander. He cannot reach Cayman. Cayman dances through the bombardment of fireballs, charging forward. He must force a close-quarters duel. But Crowley is cunning. He keeps his distance, unleashing wave after wave of flame. Cayman knows he must end this quickly, or his squad's morale will crumble. His fighting spirit blazes brighter than the fire magic, with godlike agility. Cayman weaves through the explosions, untouched. Finally, he breaches the distance with a thunderous strike. Cayman knocks the sword from Crowley's hand, but just as victory seems certain, a treacherous light flashes from Crowley's sleeve. A knight's instinct screams at him to dodge. He shifts his body just as a hidden arrow shoots from the sorcerer's cuff. Cayman evades the projectile, but he has fallen right into the true trap. Crowley seizes Cayman's sword hand with a vice-like grip. The scheme succeeds. Fire magic explodes at point-blank range, incinerating Cayman's hand until he can no longer hold his blade. You are far too green. It is common knowledge that close quarters are a mage's graveyard. Did you truly believe I would arrive without a strategy to bridge the gap? Cayman, rotten hell. A hidden mechanism clicks within Crowley's sleeve, preparing a lethal bolt to fire once more. Naive fool. Azure aura ignites within Cayman's gaze. A shockwave of pure energy erupts from his right hand, blasting Crowley backward with devastating force. The sudden impact hurls Crowley several meters through the air. You wretched monster. Desperate, Crowley raises a hand to weave a spell, but he is too slow. Cayman is already upon him, blade in his left hand, channeling his entire body weight into a devastating slash. Crowley's eyes bulge in horror as he watches his own casting hand spin through the air. You imbecile. Cold steel instantly presses against Crowley's throat. You severely underestimated my resolve. Listen well, all of you. Your commander has fallen. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately. It is not too late to choose life. Cayman's commanding voice thunders across the battlefield. Witnessing Crowley's defeat, the cultists and special forces lose their will to fight. Weapons clatter to the ground. But suddenly, a deafening explosion tears through the silence. Cayman spins around. Crowley has vanished behind a veil of smoke. The border forces move swiftly to secure the area, binding every remaining prisoner. Carnelian remarks that she was mere seconds from intervening before the battle concluded. Julian breathes a sigh of relief that she remained in the shadows. Now, the holy city may finally begin its healing process. However, one detail nags at the mind. What is the purpose of this strange jar? Azio's voice cuts through the murmurs. This vessel is the very tool Crowley utilized for his escape. Carnelian approaches an elderly cultist. Elders often hold the deepest secrets. She demands the vessel's origin, but the old man claims it is a classified secret. Patience wearing thin, Carnelian snatches up a massive boulder. With a casual squeeze, she pulverizes the stone into dust, freezing the cultist's blood. Imagine if this stone were your skull. A chilling smile plays on her lips as her hand hovers near his trembling head. Breaking down, the believer confesses it is an experimental prototype with catastrophic side effects. A drug capable of enslaving anyone who has ever tasted its influence. That implies a terrifying truth. Every ordinary citizen in the holy city who has taken medicine is now a sleeper agent. Torben seizes the old man by the collar. Where is the antidote? The captive stammers that a preventative exists, but for those already taken, only the caster can break the chains. Hand over the antidote this instant. Veins bulge across Torben's face as he roars in fury, but at that precise moment, outside the Orthodox church tower, two monstrous figures emerge from the shadows. They are titans of flesh and bone, bearing visages of pure nightmare. A border soldier raises his blade against the beasts, but his comrade is baffled. To the unaffected, those demons are clearly Commander Cayman and Hessen. The hallucination has taken hold. Slaughter them, everyone, snap out of it. One of the soldiers screams desperately, but the drug's grip is absolute. The soldier's heart spasms violently in his chest. Agony paralyzes him. locking his muscles in place. When his eyes snap open, he sees only a demon's claw descending upon him, fearless in the face of death. The border forces raise their steel to strike down the abominations. Hessen turns to Cayman, seeking permission to cut down these puppet soldiers. Cayman's grip tightens until his knuckles turn white. He cannot slaughter the very men he has fought alongside for years, yet the mind-broken soldiers charge with murderous intent. With a heavy heart, Cayman raises his blade to parry the onslaught. He refuses to kill, firmly believing there is a way to save their souls. Chaos consumes the holy city streets as the infected swarm like locusts. Above, the sky bruises into an ominous, eerie hue. Perched on a distant rooftop, the mutilated Crowley weaves magic with his remaining hand. Feast your eyes on this masterpiece. Is this truly mind control? SCO cries out in disbelief. Brothers in arms are tearing each other apart. Only Torben and Sharon remain clear-headed, protected by the antidote coursing through their veins. Tragically, the infected mob spots them. With hollow eyes, they scream and rush toward Julian's group. Torben blurs into motion. He strikes with the pommel of his dagger, refusing to draw blood from these innocent victims. From the civilians to the soldiers, no one has been spared. Torben grits out. Glancing back, CO steps forward to join the fray alongside Torben. Torben shouts for Sharon to find cover immediately. Seeing his friends fight, Julian's spirit ignites. He moves to join them, but Carnelian reads her master's intent instantly. As Julian dashes forward, Carnelian snatches his wrist. He freezes, looking back at her with confusion, unable to comprehend her interference. It is suicide. If you fall into peril, I will be forced to reveal my power. Carnelian's eyes narrow. She would have to clash with the Empire Knight, Cayman. Even broken and bleeding, his mastery of aura remains a lethal threat. If we step in now, chaos will only multiply. Julian realizes that exposing their hand now would render all their covert efforts meaningless. Julian gently clasps Carnelian's hands in his own. Carnelian, look, there are still children here untouched by the madness. I know my own weakness. I will not seek glory in battle. I will simply shepherd these little ones to safety. Julian meets her gaze with unwavering sincerity. Carnelian's resolve began to crumble. She had always known the truth about Julian. He possessed a heart too gentle for this cruel world. I truly am helpless against your kindness. You are my master. You should be commanding me like a tool, not begging me, but in her moment of distraction, a mind-controlled soldier locked onto his prey from the shadows. Carnelian, danger. Julian sensed the bloodlust first. He spun around, eyes wide. Stay close. I will not let them pass. A reassured smile touched Carnelian's lips, completely unaware of the death looming behind her. Carnelian, behind you. Julian's voice tore through the air, laced with pure terror. She drew her blade in a flash of steel, parrying the first strike just in time, but the ambush was twofold. Another blade descended from her blind spot. It was too fast. She couldn't react. No. Without a single thought for his own life, Julian threw his body into the path of the cold steel. Crimson sprayed into the air. Time seemed to freeze as Carnelian watched the warm blood gush from her master's back. Something inside her snapped. Her pupils shifted instantly into a terrifying, glowing carnelian red. A monstrous aura exploded outward, freezing Cayman in his tracks with sheer pressure. The killing intent alone shattered the ground beneath them. With a roar of fury, she swung her great sword at the wretch who dared to harm her master. Clang! The sound of colliding metal shrieked through the ruins. It was Cayman. He had intercepted her lethal strike. You are not the Lady Carnelian, I know. Cayman gritted out, straining against her monstrous strength. But then, he looked into those blood-red eyes. The memories of Hessen's strange power flooded back to him. He finally understood her true identity. But to Carnelian, none of that mattered right now. Cayman, step aside, or I will cleave you in two. She poured more mana into her blade, crushing him into the earth with overwhelming force. Lady Carnelian, listen to reason. This man is innocent. He is merely being manipulated. Cayman desperately tried to pierce through her blind rage, but mercy had left her eyes. With a feral snarl, she raised her colossal blade high, ready to execute him along with the enemy. Carnelian, stop. Julian's voice cut through the bloodlust. The blade halted inches from death. I beg of you, please, listen to me. Do not take Sir Cayman's life. Julian clutched his bleeding shoulder, his face pale with pain. Bang! The great sword crashed to the dust as she surrendered to his will. What kind of master throws away his life to protect a living weapon? It defied all logic. Yet here he stood. She frantically took off her coat to wrap his injuries, her hands trembling. Forgive me. I swore to protect you, yet I am the reason you bleed. No, the fault is mine. His gentle apology washed away her rage, leaving only confusion. Why did the heavens grant her such a foolish, noble master? So, you are the calamity, the Carnelian red-eyed seal the Empire hunts. Cayman rose to his feet. Carnelian's gaze turned icy. Will you try to arrest me now? Knight? No, Cayman replied, his voice grave. I have a request. Use that monstrous power and kill Crowley. Only you possess the ability to end him. His plea was sincere. Carnelian, Julian whispered, we must help. Sir Cayman is a man of honor. I trust him with my life. Julian squeezed her hand. She sighed. Very well, I will aid you, but if my master suffers even a scratch, I will slaughter every last one of you. And Cayman nodded solemnly. He knew the truth. Right now, this girl was their only hope for survival. Agreement reached. Carnelian crouched low, channeling mana into her legs. With a burst of strength, she launched herself into the sky like a cannonball. Hovering in midair, her glowing red eyes scanned the battlefield. There, she spotted the traitor Crowley, moving to strike Cayman while he was vulnerable. But Crowley was no longer human. The forbidden drug had completely consumed him, turning his very flesh into a volatile magical bomb. He sought mutual destruction with a crazed laugh. He triggered his core, aiming to vaporize the heavily wounded Cayman in a massive inferno. In the blink of an eye, Hessen materialized. He threw his hands wide, erecting a desperate defensive barrier directly in front of his liege. He didn't just block it. He sealed himself in with the monster to ensure not a single spark touched his master. Hessen trapped himself inside the sphere with the exploding madman. Inside the barrier, hell broke loose. Hessen gritted his teeth, his body tearing apart as he contained the overlapping waves of Crowley's fire magic. The energy raged, pounding against the translucent walls, seeking escape. While Hessen held the line with his life force, Cayman watched in horror. Unable to break the lock, Carnelian was still in the air, simply too far away to intervene in time. Helplessness washed over her. She could only pray. After all, Hessen was not just a seal, he was a comrade they had known for years. Boom! The containment reached its limit. Spiderweb cracks raced across the surface of the magical sphere. With a deafening shatter, the barrier failed. The blast wave hurled Hessen's broken body through the air, flinging him toward Cayman's feet. Hessen, Cayman caught his falling subordinate, his voice trembling with grief and rage. You fool. Thank the gods you are alive. Hessen's eyes fluttered open, seeing his master unharmed. A weak smile of pure joy graced his lips, even as his life force flickered like a dying candle. Cayman wept, demanding to know why. Hessen simply smiled, whispering the code they lived by. To protect one's master is the only duty of a seal. But the nightmare was not over. Against all laws of magic, the cockroach Crowley had survived the blast. Realizing he couldn't kill the knight, he sank to a new low. He snatched an innocent child from the rubble to use as a human shield. He was a dead man walking, and he knew it, but he would drag a hero down to hell with him. He glared at Cayman, knowing a knight's honor would force a trade. Cayman ground his teeth so hard they nearly cracked. It was a transparent, cowardly trap. But he could not stand by and watch a child die. Gently, he laid the unconscious Hessen on the ground. Cayman rose, gripping his sword with cold determination. The knight had made his choice. Crowley, I trust you will honor our pact. I shall take the child's place as your hostage. But before the warlock could utter another word, a blade flashed through the air. His head was severed from his shoulders in a spray of crimson. It was Carnelian, her fury unleashed. Torben moved like a phantom. His dagger lunged for Crowley, while his other hand snatched the innocent child from death's door. Traumatized by the gruesome spectacle, the child fled, wailing in terror. Watch where you swing that thing. Were you trying to slice me apart as well? Carnelian scoffed at Torben's complaints. Hardly. I simply assumed an Imperial wanted seal would be faster than my blade. Torben chose to ignore her provocation. With Crowley dead, the dark mind control shattered instantly. Cayman wasted no time rallying his scattered troops. Suddenly, Carnelian's demeanor shifted. Her eyes reverted to an innocent blue as a formidable presence drew near. Eyes right salute. Cayman sensed the newcomer's overwhelming aura and barked orders to the survivors. Discipline overrode exhaustion. The soldiers snapped to attention, offering a perfect military salute to the approaching figure. It was none other than Archibald, and the supreme commander of the Husvakan border forces. He returned the gesture, and then began a slow, suffocating walk toward Carnelian. Carnelian froze. She knew instantly. This old veteran had seen right through her disguise. Sensing the impending clash, Cayman rushed forward in a panic. "Commander, wait, who are these people?" The commander stared at Cayman with eyes like cold steel. Cayman stammered, trying to explain their assistance. "But sir, this woman, she isn't human. She is a..." Before the damning truth could spill, Julian cut him off. "She is the one I have entrusted with my life." Julian stepped between them, shielding Carnelian with his own body. "She is with me." To everyone's shock, the commander did not draw his weapon. Julian let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, but Carnelian remained wary. Why was he feigning ignorance? "As commander-in-chief, I offer my gratitude for aiding the border defense." The old man's gaze was fixed solely on Julian, ignoring the monster behind him. "It wasn't just me, sir. We fought as one." Julian replied with a bright, disarming smile. "It seems the Holy City isn't entirely populated by villains." A rare smile cracked the commander's stony face. Julian swallowed hard, preparing to gamble everything. "To be honest, we are from Derricart. We are currently trapped within these walls." Julian clenched his fists, waiting for the judgment to fall. Carnelian's heart hammered against her ribs. That confession was dangerous. Was he actually asking the enemy commander for safe passage? The commander's expression darkened like a gathering storm. "I believe in honesty, Commander," Julian insisted, doubling down. The die was cast. Julian braced for rejection, but the old warrior simply chuckled. "A man only becomes this reckless when he has something precious to protect. You would truly burn the world for her, wouldn't you?" "Might I have a word with the lady?" "In private." The commander finally looked at Carnelian. "With me." She feigned innocence, playing the part of the confused maiden. She followed him into the shadows of a deserted alley. "Aren't we wandering a bit too far from safety?" Carnelian asked, her voice dripping with false coyness. His answer was the screech of steel leaving its scabbard. Carnelian's eyes widened. The nightmare scenario had arrived. Clang. Carnelian's greatsword materialized, blocking the commander's heavy strike just in time. The shockwave of their clash rattled the alley walls. The red-eyed seal. The commander pressed his blade down with crushing force. "You are a danger to this world." The mask was broken. Carnelian's eyes shifted from blue to a glowing, blood-red crimson. "So, you knew from the very beginning." Her aura exploded. Carnelian's strength surged, forcing the commander back. Her predator's gaze locked onto his throat. "Let's see if your legend holds up." Carnelian prepared to unleash a devastating counterattack, but she froze mid-step. The commander had already sheathed his sword. "The royal decree orders me to capture the red-eyed seal," he said calmly, a knowing smile on his lips. "But here, I see only a blue-eyed girl." "What?" Carnelian stood bewildered, her battle lust fading into confusion. She was ready for a fight to the death. "Your aura is leaking. Do you require a vessel to escape to Derricart?" The commander stepped closer, his killing intent replaced by a solemn grace. "No father holds a grudge against the savior of his son. For that, you have my eternal thanks." He walked past her, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "That boy, your master, he is far too naive for this cruel world. Keeping him by your side invites disaster. You should worry less about me, and more about your own dying child." Carnelian glared at his back, silence hanging heavy between them. The commander offered no further explanation, and turned to walk away. "Perhaps I speak out of turn, but I hope you heed my warning." With those final words, the old soldier vanished into the light. Carnelian couldn't argue. Deep down, she knew he spoke the truth. Meanwhile, within the opulent gardens of the Okalante Imperial Palace, a blonde noble sipped his afternoon tea, his face twisting in disgust. "Michelle, this filth is bitter." It was the Emperor himself. Arrogance radiated from him like a sickness. He rejected the royal chef's service, forcing the terrified maid to brew it herself. Michelle trembled, unable to refuse a tyrant's command. She hurried away, unaware that her nightmare was far from over. Garang remains hidden in the shadows. She has likely fled to Durkheart. That is the only logical outcome. The Emperor's voice is ice cold as it reaches his subordinates. The Husvakan people are utterly useless. Michelle answers, her voice trembling slightly. If I were to lead the hunt myself, Mortzel would never let me hear the end of it. At the mere mention of that name, a shadow falls over Michelle's face. The Emperor observes sharply. You always wear that expression when they are mentioned. Tell me, Michelle, the Emperor asks, his gaze piercing. Isn't serving me far superior to rotting with Mortzel? Do not tell me you yearn to return. The Emperor sneers, dripping with contempt. I exist only to obey my master's will. Since Mortzel handed me over, I am yours alone, your majesty. A tedious response. The Emperor closes his eyes, bored by her absolute submission. I will capture her, your majesty. A rough voice booms. Grant me this chance to prove my steel and loyalty. The speaker is the massive, bald figure beside the throne Haken, captain of the Lysenbel Imperial Guard. The Emperor scoffs. Is this because she once beat you into the dirt? You seek revenge now, while her power is drained. I merely wish to see if you insects can crush Garang while she is weak. Haken hesitates. Your Majesty, may I ask, why are you so obsessed with capturing her? A sharp female voice cuts through the tension. Are you terrified that the testing night might return? The speaker is Brunhild, the ruthless leader of the Imperial Guard. Testing is trapped in a place of no return. Hermann Oben Baha's face darkens instantly at that name, which implies he could return if aided by another. Brunhild seizes on the Emperor's slip. Then this Garang is the key to that very lock. Her purple irises ignite with arcane light. It seems you know exactly what needs to be done. Hermann's golden eyes bore into Brunhild with crushing intensity. Realizing her insolence, she speaks quickly. Your Majesty, I apologize for my words. Brunhild senses the killing intent behind Hermann's silence. I know you admire the testing night, the Emperor warns, but cross me again, and I will end you myself. Veins bulge on Hermann's forehead, his rage barely contained. I will engrave this lesson, Your Majesty. Brunhild stands abruptly and bows deep. Regardless, I shall grant humanity one last chance. Hermann leans back, his arrogance returning. I have no desire to destroy the world I painstakingly created. The scene shifts to the windswept port, where Torben and his sister stand with Sio. Sio is stunned that Torben is leaving the holy city. I have never left this cage, Torben admits. It is time I see the vast world with my own eyes. And you, Sharon, Sio turns to her. Will you follow Torben into the unknown? Sharon shakes her head. I will stay. This city needs healing. She extends a hand to her brother. 10 years. We meet again in 10 years. 10 years. At Notre Dame, I will be waiting. Torben grasps her hand, a bright smile on his face. He trusts her strength completely. Under the open sky, they seal their vow with a pinky promise, a bond stronger than steel. Nearby, Cayman bids his own farewells to Julian's party. Cayman bows low to Carnelian. Thank you for saving me, and for sparing my life on Black West Mountain. Carnelian laughs, a dry sound. I truly intended to kill you then, she muses, but I believe you are a beautiful soul. Perhaps my resolve needs training. Suddenly, Cayman bows his head. Carnelian rises on her tiptoes and plants a soft kiss on his forehead. Julian freezes in shock. The atmosphere shifts instantly. He has never witnessed such boldness. We have no way to repay you, only this gratitude. Carnelian smiles warmly at the night. You are a man of honor, Cayman. Cayman stands paralyzed, his face burning a deep crimson. The warrior is utterly defeated by a single kiss. Stay safe until our paths cross again. With a wave, Carnelian turns, leading Julian away. Suddenly, she pinches Julian's cheek. Ouch. One day, you will understand these things too, master. She smirks mischievously. Julian rubs his cheek, assuming she is mocking his youth and inexperience. The Holy City arc comes to a close. Julian's party begins the final leg toward Durkheart. The wind shall be our engine now, Carnelian declares. The endless blue horizon stretches before them, washing away the heavy burdens of their battles. But peace is a lie. Deep beneath the waves, a colossal shadow stirs. The calm is about to break. On deck, Co is violently ill. Seeing his misery, Carnelian approaches. Are you well? He can only groan complaints in response. I have a cure for that. Whack. Her cure is a precise chop to the neck, knocking Co unconscious instantly. Finally, the retching stops. Carnelian dusts off her hands, quite pleased with her medical expertise, so she turns her gaze to Julian. And you, is your stomach turning? Julian stiffens. I am perfectly fine. A pity. She sighs dramatically. I was going to let you rest on my lap while I stroked your hair. Wait, I feel dizzy. The sickness is hitting me, Julian cries out instantly. Under the blood-red glow of the setting sun, the ship sails on toward destiny. Toward Dirkart. For months, they had lived in the shadow of pursuit, constantly on the run. But in this fleeting moment, Julian and Carnelian finally allowed themselves to breathe and take in the scenery. The silence was broken by a sudden resolve. Carnelian. Julian's voice was steady. I have decided. I want to become a proper knight. The peace in Carnelian's eyes instantly shattered. She tensed up, her guard returning. Is this a joke if you are just trying to distract me? This is not the way. Her voice trembled with urgency, questioning him. But Julian did not back down. He gripped her shoulders, his gaze burning with intensity. I want to protect you from the Emperor's wrath. We cannot spend eternity fleeing in the shadows. Do not call my resolve foolish. You will be slaughtered before you even reach him. Carnelian's composure cracked, her voice rising in panic. Even so, it does not matter, Julian shouted back, matching her emotion. It does not matter. My previous master spoke those very words. Violently, she threw off his hands, trembling with rage. And now, he lies cold in the grave. The dead can claim it means nothing. But what of those left behind? What of the living who must carry the crushing weight of those memories? Julian fell silent, struck by the undeniable truth of her words. Before the Emperor claims me, I am simply grateful to have walked this path with you. She clutched her chest, her heart bearing its deepest fears. The stronger you become, the closer death follows. I have no need for a powerful master. With that, she turned and stormed away in fury. Torben, emerging from the cabin, froze stunned by the raw anger radiating from her. Carnelian's eyes began to glow with an ominous light. By the time she vanished into the darkness of the cabin, her gaze had turned a deep blood red. Torben turned to the boy left standing alone on the deck. What in the world just happened between you two? He had seen Carnelian rage before, but this was different. This was the terrifying desperation of a woman afraid of losing everything. Torben, do you know something? Before all this, my only dream was to wield a kitchen knife like my father. Julian's expression darkened with sorrow, but the moment I met Carnelian, my destiny shifted. When she opened her eyes and asked for my name, I knew in that instant her soul and my life were irrevocably bound together. Do you regret it, Julian? Torben cut through the sentiment. No, I cannot even conceive of a world where Carnelian does not exist. Julian's voice was steel. I may only be 16, but even I know that a humble chef has no place beside a living seal. If souls understood each other perfectly from birth, life would lose its meaning. Torben's wisdom weighed heavily on Julian's conflicted heart. All he wanted was to keep her safe. That was his only sin. The next morning, the sun rose with cruel indifference to their plight. Julian, wake up now. Co's frantic screams tore through the morning air. Carnelian is gone. At those words, Julian's eyes snapped open in horror. We have scoured every inch of the ship. She has vanished. Torben arrived, his grim face confirming the nightmare. Julian's eyes widened, his mind refusing to accept this reality. She had left without a single word of farewell. He spent half the day tearing the ship apart, searching for a ghost, but nothing remained. Was his vow of protection too heavy a burden for her to bear? Julian had no answers. Only her memory remained, burning brighter with every passing second. Her hair, her expressions, seared into his mind. The gentle melody she hummed when at peace, the silent agony she bore alone. Despair crushed Julian's chest like a physical weight. Tears streamed down his face, uncontrollable and bitter. She had abandoned him to save him. Julian collapsed to his knees, sobbing in helpless defeat. But her departure was an immutable fact. 1 week passed. The ship drifted aimlessly, trapped in the same cursed spot. Damn it all. Why has the wind forsaken us for 7 days? Seo slammed his fist against the mast, his patience frayed. Torben's eyes radiated pure killing intent. Stop this pathetic moping. You are the only one capable of moving this vessel. He marched up to Julian, his voice dripping with venom. Our supplies are nearly gone. His rage boiled over as he looked at the broken boy. I have no intention of starving to death because of your cowardice, Steel flashed as Torben drew the dagger from his waist. Sail this ship, or I will end your misery right now. The blade pressed against Julian's throat, but Seo lunged to intervene. Suddenly, a sound cut through the tension. Seo spotted a silhouette on the horizon. It's Cayman, we're saved. He waved his arms frantically. No, that is not our ally. Torben gripped his dagger tighter, his stance shifting for war. Pirates. The ominous skull grinning from the flag confirmed their worst fears. The enemy vessel surged forward with unnatural speed. A violent crash shook the deck, nearly throwing them into the churning sea. The boarding planks slammed down with a thunderous clatter, sealing their fate. Brothers, the ocean grants us a gift. Seize the new ship and burn the old one to ash. The pirate captain roared, leaping into the fray with his sword high. Boom! An explosion rocked the hull. Even in the dead calm, the chaos of war erupted instantly. Torben's expression turned demonic as the enemy swarmed the deck. Mere defense was no longer an option. This was a slaughter. This ship belongs to us. Kneel and become slaves while you still breathe. The pirates jeered, drunk on power. Seo reached for his weapon, but Torben was already moving, vanishing in a blur of lethal speed. In a heartbeat, the pirate captain's shoulder was torn open by cold steel. I would rather choose death than surrender to scum like you. Torben materialized atop the mast, a silhouette of death against the sky. His voice dripped with ice. As an assassin of the holy city, I have slaughtered countless wretches like you. He slowly extended his blood-drenched dagger, signaling the end. Only 2 remain. Do not tremble, brothers. Yet, despite his grievous wounds, the pirate captain refused to yield. Instead, he rallied his crew with a defiant roar. Make that 3! A voice cut through the tension, correcting the assassin loud and clear. Julian, run. Get to safety. Seo turned to scream his warning, but the words died in his throat. Julian was enveloped in an eerie, spectral blue light, marching steadily toward the enemy. I thought I was ready to pay any price. But the truth is, I was terrified to unleash this blade. Julian's voice dropped, shedding its childish innocence entirely. The ominous warning of Theseus echoed in his mind. But now that Carnelian has departed, there is nothing left to hold him back. No fear remains. Witnessing that spectral glow, the pirate captain sensed a primal danger. Even Torben the assassin froze. The boy's mental state had shattered into something unrecognizable. In this desperate hour, hesitation was a luxury they could not afford. Julian's fingers tightened around the hilt of the cursed sword, infertile. With a deafening shriek of metal, he unsheathed the blade. A massive magic circle erupted beneath his feet. He had actually done it. He had drawn infertile on. Seo watched in paralyzed horror. Blinding azure light exploded from the ship, engulfing the deck. A crushing spiritual pressure slammed down, forcing every soul to their knees. From the tip of the cursed blade, a legion of ghastly skulls emerged. Their piercing wails tore through the air, threatening to burst everyone's eardrums. But the power was too great. The moment the sword was fully drawn, Julian lost control. The backlash struck him down instantly, robbing him of consciousness. With a heavy thud, the boy collapsed onto the unforgiving wood. Panic surged through Seo. He scrambled to Julian's side, desperate to find a sign of life. Julian was unresponsive, trembling. Seo pressed his ear against the boy's chest, praying for a rhythm. He's alive. It's just a faint. At Seo's relieved cry, the tension left Torben's shoulders. The assassin sheathed his weapon, his cold eyes scanning the crew. Take us to Durkart, and the ship is yours. The pirates snarled, but their captain silenced them with a sharp gesture. I am heading to Durkart as well. The captain grunted. Torben's gaze narrowed, sharpening into a lethal glare. However, provisions are your responsibility. And listen well, Seo, if the boy dies, toss his corpse into the abyss. If he lives, wake him up. He cooks. Time passed. The scene shifted to a lone fishing float, bobbing rhythmically on the waves. Julian jerked the rod upward, another catch. The basket beside him was already overflowing with the day's harvest. Quite the haul today, isn't it? Julian Seo approached with a warm smile, but the boy only offered a stiff, mechanical nod. Since awakening, Julian had been mute. He simply fished and cooked like an automaton. Seo watched him, wondering if the boy's mind had truly returned. Just as Julian prepared another cast, he paused. A breeze brushed against his skin, the first in what felt like an eternity. Finally, the wind has returned. The pirate sprang into action, hoisting the sails to catch the gale. Seo sighed, the weight lifting from his heart, but Torben sensed a disturbance in the air. In a heartbeat, the calm sky shattered, lightning tore through the clouds as the sea began to boil. The pirate captain clung to the mast, barking orders over the thunder, "Keep those sails secure." The vessel groaned, tossed violently from port to starboard by the churning waters. Seo turned green, bile rising in his throat, but Julian's eyes locked onto something else, a massive shadow darting beneath the waves. He pointed silently into the depths, misunderstanding the gesture. Torben thought the boy intended to end it all. Torben lunged, grabbing Julian's arm, but for the first time in days, Julian spoke. "There is something down there." Before the words faded, a colossal tentacle breached the surface, and a nightmare rose from the abyss, an octopus-headed giant, holding their tiny ship within its gaping maw. Behold the Kraken, the overlord of the ocean, the supreme predator of the deep. But it wasn't attacking, it was waiting. A massive water tornado swirled into existence, heralding the arrival of a god. The Water Dragon King. Myrtle. This aura, emanating from the ship, is that you? Little one Myrtle descended, blocking the Kraken's path. The Dragon King's voice was a physical force, crushing the sailors even as they covered their ears. Jurang, that was the ancient name of Carnelian. Julian's eyes widened in shock. "I am Jurang's master. Do you know her?" Fighting the crushing pressure, Julian forced himself upright. His scream pierced the storm, reaching the Dragon King's ears. "Do not lie to me, human." Myrtle opened his massive maw, unleashing a roar that shook the heavens. "I speak the truth. I am her master. I gave her the name Carnelian." The pressure forced Julian to his knees. Carnelian confusion flickered in Myrtle's ancient eyes. "How dare you deceive the Water Dragon King?" The Kraken's eyes bulged with murderous rage. But Lord Myrtle gazed at the boy, stunned by the revelation. Suddenly, Myrtle's massive form dissolved into blinding radiance. The light cascaded down, flooding the deck of the captured ship. Shielding their eyes, they heard a voice change. "I haven't taken this form in centuries. It has been an age since I met a human this bold." The light faded. Standing before them was not a dragon, but a young girl with twin tails of flowing azure hair. With godlike grace, she stepped forward and slipped on a patch of seaweed. Bam! The legendary Water Dragon King face planted right in front of the mortals. Myrtle threw the seaweed down in a huff, shattering her previous image of majesty. "She seems a bit clumsy for a Dragon King, doesn't she?" Seo whispered a snarky comment to Torben, but nothing escapes a dragon's hearing. Realizing his mistake, Seo slapped his own mouth shut in a panic. Julian extended a gentlemanly hand toward the deck. Myrtle hesitated, understood his offer, and pulled herself up using his grip. "You said your name is Julian." Myrtle finally got a good look at his face. Her eyes went wide with instant recognition. She knew those features all too well. "Who exactly are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. Julian looked completely baffled. Suddenly, she slapped his hand away and demanded his true identity. "I think you must have me confused with someone else." Julian stammered. "I'm just a chef from Keon," he insisted. Myrtle stared at him in disbelief. This reality was too absurd to comprehend. "The Carnelian you speak of is the seal of the Dragon Emperor himself. Did you know the weight of that burden when you made your pact?" Julian shook his head, admitting his ignorance. "But it doesn't matter what she was before. I accept her, past and all." At the mention of Carnelian, the fire returned to Julian's eyes. Seeing that familiar spark, Myrtle could not help but sigh. "As reckless as always," she muttered. Julian frowned. "I admit I am reckless, but we have never met before." "Have we?" Myrtle ignored his question. "Fate brought us here for a reason. Let me tell you a secret." Her voice dropped to a grave whisper. "There are 3 Dragon Kings who rule this world. Tessing, the King of Sky and Wind, and the king of earth and mountains. And I, mortal, am the king of ocean and water, but the king of earth is actually your human leader. Supreme Emperor Hermann Oben Baha, hundreds of years ago, Testing and Hermann waged a catastrophic war for the dominion of humanity. Hermann sealed Testing away, nearly destroying him. Carnelian left you because your presence awakened those painful memories from the past. You are the master of a dragon now. Mortal placed her hands on her hips, her gaze piercing. She is a creature of immense power. You cannot handle her. Julian clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. I do not care about power levels. I promise to stay by her side forever. His voice rang out with absolute conviction, laying his heart bare. Oh. Mortal fell silent. I suppose some things never change, even after 1,000 years. Her eyes drifted to the blade at his waist. It seems you do not even know how to wield that sword properly. Her words struck him like a physical blow. Teach me, Julian pleaded, his eyes burning with determination. I must become stronger so Carnelian will return to me. Mortal crossed her arms. Are you truly willing to die for this? If it protects Carnelian, Julian vowed, I will give everything, even my life. Julian had never been so resolute. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a bustling tavern far away. Haywood pushed open the heavy tavern doors and strode in. He found a seat and casually ordered a dry martini. Suddenly, Haywood paused. He studied the bartender intently. I do not remember seeing you here before. The bartender was stunning, with crimson hair flowing over a simple sundress, but most striking were her eyes red as blood. This is Carnelian, the owner interjected. She just started working here yesterday. My name is Haywood. He straightened his posture, his casual demeanor vanishing instantly. You are not from around here, are you? Haywood pressed. Don't all drifters have a story to tell? Carnelian's brow furrowed. People either run to this place, or they are chased here. You must be one of them. If you are new, I can recommend a good restaurant, Haywood offered. But before he could finish, Carnelian cut him off. I appreciate it, but I am waiting for someone. The story then jumped forward 1 year later, in the port city of Belova. It was a haven where weary sailors stopped to rest. Look, a voice cried out. That is the Gaspar privateer ship. Two women pointed excitedly toward the harbor. The ship's bright red hull was unmistakable, and rumors said a noble knight was on board. It was Julian, now grown and hardened by battle. Wow, a sarcastic voice drawled. Is this the famous noble knight? Torben, taller and more muscular than before, mocked him. This was the man who unified the pirates in a single year and earned royal authorization. Seo jumped in to add fuel to the fire. Julian could only let out a long, suffering sigh. They teased him like this every single day. Changing the subject, Julian asked, Where's Lady Mortal? She went shopping, Torben replied. Boys, I have returned with the necessities. Mortal's voice rang out at the perfect moment. Lady Mortal. Julian stared at the mountain of bags. Did you take Rosita shopping again? Torben grumbled that she should have taken guards, since her dragon powers were limited in human form. You little brats, Mortal pointed an accusing finger. How dare you show such disrespect to the king of ocean and water? Why did you buy so many clothes? Seo continued, ignoring her anger. You are going to sink the ship with all that weight. Mind your own business, Mortal roared. Who says a dragon cannot have hobbies, Grisita? Put them down. Those must be heavy. Julian extended a welcoming hand toward Grisita, his demeanor gentle. She bowed her head, speaking with deep respect. Thank you for your kindness, Master. Grisita brought her hands to her chest, whispering her gratitude in a soft voice, but a warning quickly followed. Grisita, do not go shopping with her next time. The more people watching, the more she spends. Torben fixed his gaze on the spirit as well, his expression thoughtful. Tell me, Grisita, have you ever considered pledging yourself to a single master? Seo completely ignored Mirzabel, focusing instead on the spirit. What, choose just one? Grisita's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with shock at the sudden question. But Master Seo, Master Torben, and Master Julian are all my masters. She stammered, looking between them. Is it possible to only designate one? She began to fret, frantically counting on her fingers. Seeing such an adorable reaction from Grisita, Seo quickly waved his hands in panic. No, it is not mandatory, don't worry. Even Mirzabel showed a rare, happy smile at the heartwarming scene, but the peace was short-lived. A figure burst into the room, breathless and screaming. "Noble knight, we have trouble."